It's the intergalactic soul, the honorable brother, the revolutionary yourself, Darius Lockhart, and I'm here to tell you to watch Powerbombshells every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on the Fight Game Media YouTube channel. That's right, every Sunday at 1 p.m., and that's on time, every time, because when we stand together, what time is it? That's right, it's nation time.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 116 of Powerbombshells. I am Sam, that is Mel. To Harrison Butker's chagrin, we are just two broads talking about the wrestling that we watch, and actually to the chagrin of a lot of trolls who apparently don't like to be told that what happened to Sky Blue was sexual harassment and that it's not okay. But you know, as I pointed out last week, a hit dog will holler. So, and thank you for pumping our algorithm. I believe you're muted.
That's because I'm laughing so hard. I just read Brad's answer to my tweet. I did read that.
I laughed. I laughed when I saw it too.
Hey, I had to wait. I actually was holding on to that one until the end because he made himself a meme. And when you make yourself a meme, brother, in a week like this, you better believe I'm going to get on that train.
I'm glad that you did that. Perfect.
But I was like, I'm gonna wait until closer till because it'll still make people laugh.
That was perfect. I really appreciated it. It made me laugh, and the Brad's response made me laugh too.
That's what I'm here for, folks. That's to point out. I mean, if I'm going to be called ridiculous, then I'm going to be pointing out the ridiculousness of being pointing out. I just listen. I know that a lot of people, and this is serious. Like, it hurts a lot of people's mental health, and it can be very destructive and very toxic and very negative and very hurtful. And so I don't want to make light of this. I want to be straightforward. Is that for however you can deal with like online stuff, like unplug, get away, whatever. For me, because I've been dealing with sort of like the Twitterverse, especially since the 2016 campaign, in a way that I never thought I would ever become involved in it. In a way where like people I was tweeting with were ending up on like clips on the National and stuff like, and I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. Like where they're like showing Twitter users are really displeased with this decision. I'm like, yo, I know that person. Like it's because it's a work too. And it's everything for me is so I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. I take the Mike Gilbert path. I embrace it.
Right. And you have to at this point.
And I also like I have had way bigger, worser, like reframable experiences that like I mean, I've nearly died a couple times. Like it's so, and I understand, like and that's not to criticize anyone. This is not like a competition thing, but for me, when people do this, it's me winning. That's the most viewed video we've had on our channel
in a while. Now we've had clips. Yeah, I was gonna say we've had clips that have gotten into the 500s. So that was when we were talking about, I believe we were talking about Trinity being officially done with WWE. So a clip about a woman is one of our highest watch clips. But yeah, this was the highest watch clip we've had in a time. So part of it is because it got it. So if you are not aware, we clipped our conversation about Sky Blue being harassed while she was working, and that apparently pissed off a lot of dudes because I guess they thought we were calling them out directly, and showed this video to them and specifically said their names and called them out and told them, and we're talking to them directly, but they got really pissed off at some of the things that we were saying. And so they said what they had to say. Their comments were deleted, and they pumped our algorithm. Except there are some comments that are still on there. There's one guy who's just been, you know, he a hit dog will holler, and that's all I could think every time he commented something.
He hit every joke, man.
He sure was taking a lot of things personally, and that's a big red flag. And if you're somehow watching this, I'm talking directly to you. We see what you're saying. You are wrong. Sexual harassment is not okay. And if you have a problem with that, then maybe you should stop doing it.
Well, I mean, you said it. It's perfect. I mean, I always use the Han Solo line, but it's like, it's true. Like, okay, you're proving this. I mean, the one on the YouTube comments hit every trope.
Yeah.
Or almost every
literally.
trope. A new troll jumped in. That's what I was saying. I thought it was the same person's actually. Different troll.
Oh, yeah.
So let me not like credit the wrong troll.
Right.
But that's why I chimed in with the because the children thing and kind of rounded the whole thing out for me.
He also basically said that it's okay for a woman to be harassed at a GCW show because they're not on national TV. Well, listen, I attend GCW shows when they're here, and so no, it is not okay. And I have not seen that type of behavior. So that says a lot about you, that you think GCW is the type of place where this can happen. And of course, it can happen anywhere. And it could have happened at their shows, just the ones I've been to. It's never happened at. But it doesn't matter if they're on TV or not. It doesn't matter if they're drawing 10 people or 10,000 people. Harassment is not okay. And if you think it is, you need to take a serious look in the mirror and figure out why you don't have an issue with it. And it's probably because you're doing it. And maybe you should go see somebody about that.
I mean, Sam said it. There's not much more to say. And again, I don't want to like overly elevate it, but at the same time, I quite enjoy the fact that it's what brings all the incels to the yard is
tell them they can't harass a woman.
Well, and the best part though is like, this is how silly Twitter is. And I'm calling it Twitter until
it's Twitter.
I don't care.
Listen, it was always Chad Gable, never Shorty G.
Yeah, F that. Yeah. 100%.
Also, it's always Mustafa Ali, not Ali.
You will never make me. I don't care. If I make it to 8 million, whatever
Twitter followers
numbers I come to, I will continue to call it Twitter or Tweeter because I love calling it Tweeter. But the fact that it decided that the word harassment was a sensitive word that might lead to people being triggered by the potential harassment that was in the video. I'm like,
well, the video, that's the thing that so if you missed it, we got,
if you look on our Powerbombshells account, Sam actually
got flagged on Twitter because I posted the clip and said that we talked about the harassment, and Twitter flagged it for as sensitive content because I used the word harassment. Didn't say sexual harassment. There's no clip in the actual tweet that says anything about harassment. It's just a link to the clip that we were talking about. That's it. There's no actual video of the conversation at all. And Twitter flagged it. And so it was, of course, they were like, sometimes we get it wrong, obviously. And you could appeal it. So I appealed it, and they've not said anything about it. So I guess it's still flagged as sensitive content. I don't know, but it's just so one thing after it's just so weird. Like that got flagged as being sensitive. We had sensitive men in our comments about it for days.
I mean, but Holocaust deniers are fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah,
but me say the word harassment. The word harassment is sensitive.
Apparently.
I'm sorry.
Apparently, I didn't know. Maybe I should have put a trigger warning on it. I don't know.
For those of you who have never read George Orwell's 1984, you might go check that out. You would be shocked. Because this is newspeak on a level that. But again, it's like, I'm glad that we got attention regardless. And I don't even care because it's like, all you're doing is telling it, like Garrett said it perfect, is you're telling on yourself. You're totally showing and you don't have to work that hard with these people. You don't have to elevate them. You just let them talk. The suggestion, the tribalism, the suggestion that this would never happen at a WWE show. It's like, it doesn't matter what show it's happening at.
Have you been to a WWE show?
But it just doesn't even.
It doesn't matter though. It's
impertinent to the conversation of the fact that it happened. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be happening. And you have rules against it happening. It's never been, and I've dealt with this in live theater before because I worked front of house in a live theater, and we did a show that was about, and I may have mentioned this once or twice, but we did a show that was about Polish Americans, and it was called Polish Joke. And all these wackadoos started like pouncing on us because they thought we were attacking the Polish community. It was a Polish guy who wrote it. It was a famous poet too. Not poet, but a playwright that wrote it. It was like, and the whole thing was talking about Polish culture and growing up Polish and the prejudice that he experienced. Sure. And so it was literally a parodical like deal. The entire thing was Polish Joke was, and it was like, okay, so clearly none of you have read the play or seen the play.
Right.
You just you're
getting mad at a title.
You cherry picked what you wanted out of this little blurb about this and turned it into the like Polish American Community Cultural Center is calling up to denounce the play. And it's like, brother, the play hasn't even opened yet. I've only seen rehearsals because I'm that nerd in the front of house and I'm allowed to sneak in at the back because I've made friends with the other people that'll let me do it. Like, and it's hilarious, by the way. And it was an excellent like way of telling that story and that experience. Of course. But yeah. It's silly because we had to be told not to talk to the press because the press was calling in front of house again and it was like, I'm a ticket seller, dude. Like, can I get back to alphabetizing the 152 tickets I have for tonight's performance? Like, just stop.
Yeah.
The hit dog thing sums it up.
It really does. Well, and I do want to, at another point where we talk about, we were talking about how fans shouldn't behave that way, and you're not supposed to, obviously you're making it for other fans, but we need to also drive home the point. This is Sky Blue's workplace. The people were doing this. That's like coming into your office and saying things to you while you were doing your job. Yes, it's entertainment for us and they paid money for their tickets. But again, freedom of speech is not freedom of consequence. And you came into her workplace and you made her feel uncomfortable and you made her feel unsafe and who knows what else. And not to mention the child that was sitting there with you again, as we played out all this stuff that you did and that child witnessed not only you saying these things, they witnessed Sky's reaction to the things that you said. And then they witnessed Aubrey Edwards and Rachel Ellering coming over to you and telling you what you were saying was wrong and inappropriate. And then that child watched you get thrown out because of it. So there are so many layers to this. It's not just the harassment. It was you're coming into a workplace. You are actively making someone feel uncomfortable. And one of the guys that keeps pumping our algorithm was saying, well, he was obviously drunk. A, no, it wasn't. It's not obvious. And B, that doesn't make it okay.
Used to be behavior. I hang out with drunk men all the time. And yes, what they managed to do, behave like human beings with pride and dignity and respect for my personal space and me for theirs, for that matter.
Right.
Because, and I've experienced some of this with my Ren Fair friends. Again, I bring it back to that because it's very similar in the way that their jobs are structured and the way their bookings are just structured, the way that people think they can you're dressed up a certain way and people think we've experienced it personally, just being hardcore going to the festival people. You put on a costume and suddenly a bunch of people think that it's okay to put their hands on you or say things to you. And I liked the unharassable comment. I know that Garrett took it out, but the reason that I thought that because that's such a like call out of that right there is like you just called on yourself. Thank you. Right. But I have had like and it's not like to even bring it out, but it's like the experience of having someone enter a space where my community members were around me and this person tried to pull that shit and everybody around me went wrong.
Yeah.
And that person was asked to leave forever. And that's it. But it happens all the time, just in normal, everyday people doing their normal women.
Yeah.
Doing their normal everyday thing. And it's so weird, but yet somehow all these other men, and it's like the one thing I didn't appreciate at all was he was you're trying to paint all men and you're man hating.
No, we're not. If you're taking that as all men and you're trying to not all men us, you are.
Oh, he said no. I mean, he said no.
Yeah, he did. Oh, yeah, he said we were going to start another Me Too movement. Well,
Me
if that
Too
keeps
movement,
people from getting
which
harassed,
you know what?
then...
Hey, you know what? If Sam and I and this little podcast right here and this cute little fun community and my ridiculous hats and tweet and my shit posting are enough to start another Me Too movement, high five, sister.
Right.
That means that they're all gonna have to talk about it again and face it. And I don't like what came out of the Me Too movement because I don't like trial by public opinion. Like, the problem with the reason that Me Too didn't get solved and speaking out didn't get solved and Gamergate didn't get solved is because a lot of deflective shit goes on. People make some dumb apologies, but no one ever gets to the crux of the issue, which is that this indoctrinated behavior needs to stop. And the way to stop it is to learn, and learning is hard.
Yeah.
And truth
is hard.
Oh my God. Truth is terrifying.
Yeah.
Because it means that we have to examine ourselves and maybe even say, holy crap, I was wrong. I need to correct that behavior and not do that anymore.
Right.
And and we look at that as a weakness, when in fact, doing that makes you stronger than anybody. Like, to be able to go, damn, that really is something that needs to take the fore. That is really something that needs to be discussed more often and openly. And we really do need to continue to have discussions about, even in 2024, Sky Blue can't go to work without worrying about some dude, regardless of his mental state,
or
in front of his child,
or not,
acting inappropriately, to say that, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And again, I think that they overdid. They should have, we talked about the zero tolerance deal. They gave this guy multiple chances by being talked to by people prior to his ejection.
Yeah.
So they went so far as to give this dude the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
Which makes them bigger, but also you got to make examples of people at this point, and I stand by it.
Everything you said is correct, and this actually turns into perfect timing because that will put us right into the next part of the conversation that kind of goes along with this, because this person's case is has taught wrestling fans certain wrestling fans to behave a certain way for decades, and now hopefully he's going to deal with hopefully he's going to deal with some consequences, but we shall see. But we do have a guest with us who was able to make it. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to come today or if we were going to have to bring him in later, but I'm going to go ahead and bring him in now, if I believe he is ready. So we have BJ Bethel with us today, and he is gonna unfortunately he gets to talk about his current favorite topic, which is what the hell is Vince McMahon doing now?
If only we all knew. Well, according to NBC News, he's flying the world. He's on his private plane, flying the world, visiting friends, delivering orphaned puppies and kittens.
That's the PR
spot. Rehabbing. I'm sorry. Yeah, something was.
Yeah, definitely rehabbing the image. And just like somebody else who works for that company named Logan Paul, who you will never convince me otherwise, that the whole reason he came to WWE was to rehab his image. And if you don't know about what Logan Paul has done, you should Google Logan Paul Japan, and then Google his brother and find out even more things.
I'm shaking my head no, just because it's so gross that I can't
Yes,
I hate when you remind me to remember.
Well, I have to
I'm not familiar with the Paul story. I'll have to go look
don't worry about it.
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Never
when
mind. I'll just take your word.
You have enough to handle
when I have to
with
because
what you're dealing with. I mean, because you do deep. you and John are doing actual coverage, and Brandon Thurston are doing actual coverage of this, and having to read all of this ridiculous stuff and to like wade through, and legal documents aren't easy to read. And then it's like, you're the one person who's pointing out like the length of it, who I keep like, I'm like, guys, the Kung Lee suit just settled after 10 years. This is going to take a long time. So it's like, don't pile it on poor BJ there.
Yeah, we don't know how long this is going to go. We also don't know. This is just getting started. Plus, there's the criminal indictment. I think there's a grand jury that's been seated. It's been seated for 11 months, according to WWE and their own filings and what they've told stockholders. It's gone on for 11 months. Wall Street Journal reported, it was a few weeks after the Grant civil suit became news, that there was the federal grand jury wasn't looking at just SEC filings. They weren't looking at SEC filings. They were looking at rape, sexual assault, sex trafficking allegations, and they had actually taken Vince's phone. They'd taken his electronic communications, and this is stuff that could go on for a while. The average federal criminal grand jury sits anywhere from 12 to 18 months. Right now, that's into about, I think, 11 months. So, and they can extend up to 24. They do got to talk to a judge about that, but they could extend it up to 24 months if they're looking at it. So you're looking just for the criminal side of this, if something does emerge, and usually if it's very unlikely for them not to indict on a federal grand jury unless it's a police officer, just because of the nature of how laws work. But yeah, you could be looking up to another year before the grand jury. Let's see, and that's the Southern District of Court in Manhattan.
Yeah.
That's the same place where Trump just is on trial right now, and it's also the same court that Sean Combs was just had his house raided. That was the grand jury where they were seated. So that place is serious business. This isn't a game anymore. This is serious stuff for Vince. The atmosphere is a lot different. The legal challenges are a lot different. He's looking at some serious trouble. I don't think some people in WWE even realize it. I think some do. Ones that I've talked to there, they've had some serious, I should quit using that word, but people there that know and understand this are like, okay, this is it. And there's others that are just like, I don't think they realize that the gravity of it. But yeah, this is going to be going for a long time.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason we are seeing some of the tactics by Vince is because he knows there's a long game to this, and he is trying to garner as much public sympathy as he can. He wants to be the fragile old. He wants it both ways. He wants to be the fragile old man that can't stand trial, but he also wants to be Mr. McMahon that everybody fears or loves because they grew up watching him. So he's like doing this. He's betting on fans who support him to remember that Vince McMahon. But then for the people who don't outside of wrestling, he wants to be like, oh, he's just a harmless old man. And so we're gonna see. We've only seen a couple things from the New York Post, but I have a feeling like that's just the very tip of the surface of what he's going to do. So if you guys missed it this week, the New York Post put out an article, I think it was on Tuesday, claiming that Janel Grant had text messages saying that she liked rough sex, she liked all these things, and that, but somehow Vince can't produce those text messages to prove his point because he just conveniently deleted them after the relationship ended, which also shows to me that he's trying to paint a picture of, oh, once the relationship was over, I deleted it. But she kept the tweets because she's obsessed with the relationship. So that's why these tweets, these text messages, that's why she kept the text messages, is because she's still obsessed with it when in fact she has evidence and she is hanging on to that evidence for this trial. But Vince is painting it as she's obsessed with me and but I'm over it, so I deleted it, and I have no proof of what I just claimed.
Yeah.
The thing that is weird to me, real quick, I don't mean because I want your insight on this, is that, but this was a filing. This was an addendum that they filed. It's like, it was like slandering her. This was not like a press release. Their counter filing right now is that Janelle's obsessed with me and defaming. I mean, it wasn't like, is this substantial? Like, they basically put out a press release, but filed it as a court addendum, and it is essentially trying to control the narrative of Janelle is the one who, I mean, at minimum consented, which doesn't matter because you can't consent to being trafficked. That's illegal. Like,
Yes.
It's just, the bottom line is, if you traffic a human being across state lines, it is illegal, whether they signed an NDA or not, and also whether or not, like, that's a crime. So
Yes.
is this yeah?
Well, first of all, I mean, Vince, if he deleted his message, he could get them back. I mean, it's easy to recover those, especially if you have a court order. But the problem is I think the FBI has his phone. Second of all, Brian Alvarez made this point as well, and it's like, okay, you're wanting to move this to private arbitration, but you're using these filings to kind of make this point that you just said, which is you're just trying to paint her as somebody who was wanting to participate in this willingly, who loved it, who was really into it, and which is kind of bizarre. But at the same time, they're trying to hit at the reason they're trying to do that is because NDAs forced under duress through sexual harassment. There's multiple federal laws that are against that. It's going to be very hard for them to prove that Grant was willingly doing all of this, and then she should go back and have to play under the rules of the previous NDA, which they have not even said how she violated. They just mentioned and said, oh, she violated the previous NDA. But the only information we have on any of this is through her complaint, which says that Vince was upset and made her sign the NDA after an anonymous email went to the board talking about their relationship. So it's become kind of a game where they're also using that not only as a way to try to say, oh yeah, she's got to play by the NDA because, this was somebody who was, they went to law school, and she knew what she was signing. And she was also, she wasn't just a victim of this. She was somebody who was really into it. So, everything she's saying, it's BS, and she should have to go do private arbitration. Looking at the complaint, excuse me, I don't think that's got a chance in the world of happening just through analysis and just through seeing how this has worked through federal courts, because the federal court precedents over the last few years, as well as if you go back and look at just the rulings, if you go back and look at the current law, which we have the 2023 Speak Out Act. We also had 2021 ending non-disclosure agreements for ending arbitration in cases of sexual harassment. It's a very long name for a law, but if you go back, it's in there. It goes back to 2021. Those are just two federal laws that have set groundwork for this. If there's anything sex involved with this, it's going to be an uphill battle for them to file and say, okay, we're going to give you arbitration because we don't believe Janel Grant's side of this. And the biggest problem for them is Grant's complaint has dates, times, places, people, text messages, videos. They put in some of the text messages from the, this is another thing Vince's side pointed out. Oh, she only put in some of the text messages. Well, some of the text messages are just are horrendous. They also have video audience. There's also video evidence out there. There's also whether she still has that or not, they will go find out. They can get that from the a service provider of the phones, because there was corporate phones that were apparently doing all this stuff. That's really smart to do if you're going to be a sex criminal or if you're going to do anything. Let's do it over the corporate phone.
I just think I think especially him. I think that I think he believes his own. Like, he has worked himself entirely into a shoot about himself. Like, he believes that he's above everything.
I first heard about allegations with him going back to 2003. I started my career out covering pro wrestling, and I did it online. And once I started talking to people that were in developmental, I was lucky. I was within pretty reasonable driving and distance of Heartland Wrestling and also the Ohio Valley Wrestling. And I started hearing stories about this then. And then from other reporters, just the things going back to the 80s with the Ring Boys, things that were happening there at the time currently. And I just don't see, and I think Vince has got such an ego. I think the way he paints things, I think the way things have worked for him. And, this is just my own analysis. This is not me being a reporter. This is just my opinion of covering a guy for a long time. Because I think he wants it both ways. He wants to be able to say, I own your reality, Janelle. I don't see you as being worth anything. I'm going to paint what your reality is for you. I'm going to force you to live into it. And then you're going to have to, I think it's that much control that he likes. I think it's what he's used to having. I heard a PR rep say the other day something about, they couldn't believe how willingly they went, the HR and the human resources and things that are supposed to protect the company from this went along with Vince bringing her into the company, like how quickly and it seems that this happened. Right. And it's like, you got to understand WWE and Vince McMahon's relationship with the company to understand how that could happen, which is WWE is built for Vince. Everybody there is built to serve Vince or protect Vince. That's, if you listen to Ronda Rousey, that's Bruce Pritchard's entire existence.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason why she would lie. And I've talked to other people this too. It's like, what's his job there? We don't know, but he's always on the phone with Vince. And he's got Vince on one phone, he's got Triple H on the other phone. They're arguing, but he's Vince's guy. And I think part of that is just like he likes this. I think a lot of this is probably, I think the letter coming out, I don't see how that helped him at all, because Epstein, Weinstein, other people who have been in situations like this where they've been abusing people in large amounts, using power to abuse people over a long course of time, they also add letters too. I mean, it means nothing. I think another question of it was that letter came from an official WWE investigation. If you look at the markings on it and on the bottom, it's okay. How did he get that? It's like he shouldn't have gotten that. It's from another employee they're being investigated by. But it's WWE. It serves Vince. So actually he gets what he wants. It's just it's his personality and how he is related to the company that you see these things happening that way.
Right. And then it just feels like and then when we talked about a little bit about how like John Laurinaitis in the beginning was like, oh, this totally happened, but I am also a victim. And then within the last month or so, we've seen him completely flip, and it was like no, I stand with Vince. I will do anything that it's basically, I'll do anything Vince tells me to do. Vince got to him in some way, it feels like, or he wasn't getting the deal he thought he was going to get, and so so now it's Vince, John Laurinaitis, and WWE have all, they're all pushing for this to go to private arbitration because they want people to forget, that. So it's basically, you and I have talked about this quite a few times, that it's not only are they sending this message that, they think it needs to go private, is they're also trying to tell other women not to come forward, because if they do, this is what's gonna happen. If they don't want any other woman joining Janelle Grant's case or doing anything that could potentially help her or break her, or if they are considering breaking their NDA to talk about what happened to them, then they are also doing this, to silence other women as well.
Now, you don't think it's going to go to? You don't think that? I mean, obviously, we don't know. And the system is incredibly corrupt, and that guy has a lot of money, and he can do whatever he wants. But you don't think that they're going to be able to push this to arbitration?
I just don't. I've read federal law and I've read recent precedent. I don't see how the case they've made would keep it from being pushed into private arbitration, because the purpose of those laws is to keep cases just like this from happening. Now, Speak Out Act's relatively new. There has been 2 lawsuits involved with that. One was between Tiger Woods and his ex-girlfriend, and another was between Vin Diesel and a personal assistant. And they had signed NDAs, and then they sued Now they sued under the Speak Out Act, saying, "Hey, we should not be subject to these NDAs." NDAs have been falling for a while in court. They're becoming less and less legal, as has the relationship between employees and employers when it comes to sexual relationships. Like they're viewing those more as assault in the last few years, like the last 10 to 15 years, they're viewing more and more of those as being very problematic, not okay. So they're seeing people that already, just because of the beginning, because of the power dynamics, it's already a harassment situation when it occurs. That's just how the courts are seeing it through different rulings and things like that. But I don't see how this is going to go to arbitration. I just don't think it's going to work that way. I also think they are trying to send a message to, and I've told Sam this a lot. It's just like, I just think they're trying to send a message to any other people that want to join this. And this is what's going to happen. We're going to put you on public notice. You're going to have stories about you in the New York Post. Meanwhile, you're going to have to read PR releases like the NBC story, which it wasn't a PR release. They did get in the dirt of the story, but it's like, it's ridiculous to think that Vince McMahon's flying the country, flying the world in his private jet, delivering orphan puppies and kittens to people. It's like, that stuff's meant to get at to the people that are on the other end of this. They want Vince in the wrestling world kind of controls the wrestling world, which is why so many people go along with this kind of thing. But this isn't the wrestling world anymore. This is federal court. I'd say his biggest plus he has is that this court, the civil suits in Connecticut, and he's had a long series of good luck in Connecticut. A lot of that's because he's from there. He's put a lot of money in there.
You get to know the judges.
Well,
you get to know the way that the court system works, unfortunately, is that it gets a little incestuous once you get into the local areas.
Yeah, that's where they chose to file, probably because that's where the relationship started.
And the grossest part of that though is the thing that if it fails in arbitration, that Janel has to pay him back all the money, the $1 million that they paid her, and pay all the court fees and all of these. It's gross all the way around. It's right down to there's that little spite piece in that Stanford arbitration thing that is really. I also agree with Brian Alvarez on the fact that you've said the whole time that you're innocent. So
yes,
if I were innocent of the kind of crimes that this filing accused me of, you better believe my ass would be in a courtroom defending myself, and there would be discovery up the wazoo. I would show you everything. The idea that that these emails can't be retrieved, that's just I've read way too much about the FBI to know that, and what the capabilities of our state of situation is.
Yes,
and that's ridiculous.
I can't wait till the oral argument for this hearing goes forward, because first of all, there's the motion to strike, which Grant's law firm or Grant's legal counsel filed, which was basically saying this is slander in the form of a motion. We want this. Yes, it was all character based on Grant. We're going to strike that, and then Rosenberg and her firm, who's representing Vince, came back and said, no, here's a statement of facts, and the statement of facts was pretty much the same thing as we read in the earlier motion, which was just firing and firing and firing at her character and her reasons for doing this, and that she actually liked it. And then they also file a memorandum to go along with that, and it's just like, okay, that's the thing is I've noticed this in cases, and this is completely editorializing, but the more hyperbolic side in a court case, especially in something like this, could be civil, could be criminal, they usually don't have the law on their side. The side that's sticking to the facts, they're usually doing pretty well. And I can use one case as an example of this. Rosenberg's firm represented Major League Wrestling in a suit against WWE.
Yep.
WWE side was like, oh my God, there's no way, it was very hyperbolic. The saying is if you can't argue law, argue justice. If you can't argue justice, argue the law. And from what I've seen and just my experience covering anything from state to federal cases, is that the side is the most hyperbolic, the most, really putting the most invective into any of their filings is usually the case it loses. I don't. It's very rare that that's the side. If you got the law on your side, you'd be arguing the law. And I don't think that's something Vince and his team believe for a minute that's going on. I think that's one reason you're seeing these filings, and I think another one, the major one, is they want to send a message to all the women out there who have been affected by things like this in the last 20, 30, 40 years. And some of these cases, I guess there's other ones out there. Trust me. I've got a ton of names that I have that I wish people would talk to me with, but I've just names I've heard and put places that are rumors. There's a long history in this, and they're sending a message to those people, which is, don't come forward, or we're gonna put you in the New York Post.
Right.
Yeah, I just finished reading recently. Urban Mushnick wrote Wrestling Babylon. I don't know if you've read the book or not, but it was essentially a compilation of a lot of his stories that he's written over the years. And I don't know how familiar you are with him. And he has a great sense of humor, but he's very visceral about the way that he talks about this stuff. And he's been covering Vince back to the late 70s and so he'd covered like the Ring Boy thing, and he covered Jimmy Snuka harder than just about anyone in the time frame that I can tell from just looking at the research.
It was Wrestling Babylon. Was this Phil Mushnick?
Urban Mushnick.
Urban Mushnick. Yeah, I've talked with Urban. I talked with Urban.
Sweet.
Actually, a long time ago when Linda McMahon started running. But I understand. I haven't read the book. I understand it's a great book, but when she started running for Senate, I had some conversations with him. Those stories of things that come together like that, his coverage of it, that stuff's still out there. And the thing is that there is no statute of limitations on federal sex crimes.
Correct.
State sex crimes, it depends on the state.
Right.
I think New York just got rid of them. California just got rid of them. That's two areas where there's a lot of people. WWE did a lot of business in those two states.
Well, and one of the women was from California. I'm trying to remember. Unfortunately, there's so many cases.
That was a San Diego case.
I was going to say there was a woman in California that Vince assaulted, and that's the one that the husband came after him or tried to come after him at the arena, and was stopped by security.
That was the massage therapist, right?
I think.
Vice News uncovered that one. She was at a spa.
Endless, recent.
Yeah, and
blatant.
There was another writer, I can't remember the name, that did a lot of the recent work on Rita Chatterton. Mm-hmm. So this stuff's out there. There's patterns to it. If you've read the stories that are just out there, you can read some of the patterns and some of the profile just of how this stuff happens. If you're more interested into that, some people. I can
and you can kind of see
it, but
and the Dark Side of the Ring episode that they just did, that was a season finale, that was Black Saturday, and it was talking about how Vince, the way he maneuvered in to take over. And I was talking about it, like within the first few minutes, you already see patterns of how Vince will present himself one way publicly, and then behind the scenes he is just ruthless and he is evil, and he will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And so you see these patterns like coming out just in the wrestling side of things, so you can see that that's just the type of person he is. And I was like, you can just see how the patterns go and how it develops into other things, and how it's at first it's the wrestling business, and then he's used the way he treats women, and the way that he treats women wrestlers, and just the way, and then how he degrades them on TV when they don't cooperate with him. And then you can go back and watch,
you can go back. Yeah, you can go you could do an entire book article on the harassment of WWE women that just occurs in the episodes on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, just from Lita's Amy Dumas's podcast, where she talked about how she did not want to do now they talk about it today as this proud, ruthless aggression moment, or whatever the time period was of the company, or attitude era, when they had the sex celebration in the ring.
Right.
Amy Dumas didn't want to do that. She was fully against doing that. They've already used so much of her personal life and turned the fans against her. And Vince threatened to fire her even after Edge and John Cena stood up and said, no, if she doesn't want to do this, she shouldn't have to. Well, she ended up having to do it, and then they canned her a few months anyway, which is that's kind of a pattern there. Mm-hmm. And then they slimed her on the way out. And to me, that's like a story, because it's like sexually harassing somebody in their guise of their work on live television. That's a big deal. And there's tons of stories just involving that. You got the Tori Wilson, Don Marie. Like somebody showed this old match graphic from a few years ago, and they build the match as stepmom versus stepdaughter.
Yeah.
It's
and even the story
stuff.
that happened right towards the end was before Ric Flair left. There was stuff with Ric Flair and Lacey where Charlotte was jealous of Lacey because of that whole storyline that they were doing. And then they had the storyline where Lacey ended up being pregnant and it was supposed to be Ric Flair's. And that story was 2 years ago. So this is recent.
That was a storyline that I don't want to get too deep into it. I think everybody's heard the story, but Vince always wanted to do a storyline where he got Stephanie pregnant. And when he first pushed this out, I guess Dusty Rhodes, it's funny, they always treated Dusty Rhodes like they never needed him, yet they always kept bringing him back. Yeah. And they had to bring him back to start NXT. And then they had to bring his son back. It's fun. It's funny how that, he ended up winning and all that, right? But but to me, the thing that struck me most with that is just that Dusty got fired because when he brought it up in the creative inning, Dusty literally fell out of his chair. Was like, what in the world are you talking about? And it was just this weird situation with Stephanie, and he finally started living it out between Flair, Lacey Evans, and Charlotte, and that's what finally got Flair to leave the company. He's like, I'm not doing this.
How bad does the storyline have to be that Ric Flair is like, I'm not doing this?
I mean, Flair's got the ladies man character. He's had a lot of things. He's been got the plane ride from hell stuff, but it's like this is it just tells you where Vince is at and storyline wise, where a lot of the direction of that company and the things that ended up on air. It's like, okay, this was all him. This wasn't somebody else that pitched this, and if they did, and Vince liked it, ultimately he put it on there. But I think there's just a story to be had where you can just take examples from live TV and show, that this is a guy who sexually harassed women on TV on a regular.
You could put that in as evidence. You could just literally put it in as evidence.
I'm sure that's going to be. I don't know if that'll be part of that or not, but I can't imagine why they couldn't go through hours and hours. Problem is, some of it's banned on Peacock. You can't go back and watch it through the network.
Yeah,
it's amazing to me that a company in the 2000s has so much problems in the 2000s. You're not talking about stuff from the 60s. You're talking about stuff in the 2000s and 2010s, and you can't watch any of it.
You just had some asshole judge pardon Harvey Weinstein in the one case because of too many people, because the lawyers established a pattern of behavior. Is essentially, I mean, if you're calling it what it is, but essentially that judge pardoned him, saying that too many people who weren't named in the lawsuit testified against his character, and that meant that they
overturned it, but they're supposed to be taking it back to court in September.
They're retrying it. It's just
making these women relive all of it once again.
The problem is that unfortunately that garbage precedent gets put into the tumbler of justice, and that could affect Vince's case and Janelle's case, and that in a negative way for Janelle, because when these garbage judges make these decisions, for better or worse, they're in the system, and it's all about deciding based on precedence. I still think there's the wild card, and I will always throw this out there. There is always the wild card, not just the sex trafficking, but he violated SEC and FEC law, and you don't mess with the money.
Yes.
And the only billionaires that are in jail, for the most part, are ones that rob from other billionaires. So
I think because of Weinstein and Epstein, and because of stories similar to theirs, excuse me, I got my allergies acting up.
No worries.
I think with them, I think a lot of the doubt that you would get, this person just wants money. That used to be the dismissal whenever you saw one of these cases happen.
You see it online.
But it's
you see it in when the bots attack your tweet about it.
It's online.
You get, I mean, Sam's had this happen to her recently.
I see it all the time too. It's ridiculous.
I had bots come after. Bots found my Janelle Grant support tweet the other day, and I had to mute it because it overnight just started. I told the BJ about this, and I told Mel too. So I went I saw that tweet had maybe 30 likes or something when I went to bed, and the next day it had like several, it had like over 150 likes on it, but then all these comments were coming in from people I have never talked to before in my life. And BJ and I were talking about it, and I was like, the more I look at it, the more this feels like bots. And BJ did some looking, and it looked like a lot of those accounts had been harvested from other, like, just inactive accounts, and they turned it into bots. And so who knows? I mean, maybe it's, Vince's new PR team that,
that's
kind of what they
corporate
do.
practice
Or
now,
if that's, but
honestly.
I was gonna say, or if that's WWE's PR team that are going and they're finding any tweets that mention Janel in a positive light and they're attacking it. And so that's something that we're probably going to see a lot of in the next, until this goes to trial. Oh, probably even once the trial, I assume this will go to trial, and once the trial starts, I'm sure we're going to see it pick up even more.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to depend on timing, like when the criminal indictment comes down, if it comes down. I mean, there's a chance that might not happen. It's very rare that there's a grand jury that's sat and it does not get into an indictment. There's the old school, old fashioned, JD Oliva, Mike Gilbert talked about this too, that you can indict a ham sandwich. Because usually, it's the prosecutor arguing, okay, this is why this person should be charged for these crimes, and they should do trial, and they should be brought to court. And that's what the federal grand jury in the end sits down and listens to at the end of all of this. And most cases they indict. It's a very, very, very high percentage. And so likely Vince McMahon would get indicted. So a lot of it's going to come down to that. And a lot of it's, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because I mean, you're not talking just about Janel Grant here. You're talking about a 40, 50-year history of behavior in a company. And a lot of it's already well documented. Lee Cole has a podcast talking about his brother's experiences in the company. He had somebody on anonymously. He just spoke by, with their own voice, didn't invest a name, who was somebody who was involved in the Ring Boy scandal. Of course, you'd have to prove that and do all the due diligence through court. But, he sounded very credible on the podcast. This is a case that could take a very, very, very long time. From the civil side, I think if they get things moving, once they do on the criminal side, it depends on where they want to stop at, and depends on what they got. I mean, if they go in and what they have is Janel's complaints, those are quite a bit. I mean, those are well documented. They seem to have a lot of evidence, and the complaint lays it out really strict. Like the complaint with Janel Grant, the one thing that struck me when I first read it was laid out like a criminal complaint. These are laws that they broke: sex assault, sex trafficking, just things like that. They go down the list, and as you get to the bottom, it gets to things like the NDAs. It gets to Vince violating the NDA by not paying. His side claims she violated it first, so that's why he didn't pay. And her side says that no, he just stopped paying. That's why it got violated. But it's to me, it's like, if just based on the complaint, thinking, okay, if this is something similar to what the feds have going in, like let's just say they have nothing else, and the Grant team didn't have Vince's phone, so God knows what's on that thing. Then I mean, that's a pretty tough road to follow. I mean, that's a pretty tough road. I mean, you got other people drawn into this. There's corporate executives who are witnesses to this. I mean, you're not going to be able to say, no, I'm not getting involved. You're going to have to testify. This is federal court. This is Southern District of Court. They just they got a current presidential candidate and former U.S. president on trial there right now. They do big boy business. Right. This isn't something where Vince throws a few $100s at some promoters or wrestlers and they turn their head, or local law enforcement, or whatever the case may be in his past. So he's in serious trouble, and it's going to come down, and then people that protected him and he hired to protect him, ultimately they're going to have to testify about this too, and they could face consequences. So you look at long-term managers there, you look at people who were closest to him.
Oh my gosh, the potential for roles, like people rolling on this guy for plea deals, is ginormous, because once they're faced with potential jail time and their names getting out.
What's interesting about the Laurinaitis deal is that seemed to be what he was kind of leaning toward, and maybe it didn't work out. I don't know. I do know he hired.
That's still admissible. I mean, the fact that he did that all stuff is still admissible. The fact that he's jumping back and forth, it can still be like, you can bring that to court when court happens and be like, look at him jumping all around. He rolled on him and then unrolled on him. Like,
yeah,
they're kind of telling on themselves. And I don't know if they realize that their behavior is also admissible in court, but I hope that they keep acting like dum-dums because it'll work to Janel's fan.
I mean,
JD and Mike also made it a point that I had totally not thought of. I think it was them that the FBI has it in their craw for him because he's got away with so much stuff with them.
Yes.
And if you've ever read history, which is this is a weird like wheelhouse of nerdery that I have, is like the CIA and the feds, man. You don't get in their craw and go. It'll stay for generations. Even people that weren't around when it happened, it will still like stick in their craw. And I was like, that's a really good point.
And, you know, some people have said this before. It's like, why didn't they, you know, they had a lot more evidence and it could have got a lot more time having the ring boys testify and going through that. But I think part of the issue was at that time in the early 90s, just the public and the jury wouldn't have had the stomach for it because it was just so imaginably horrible.
Right.
Well, and the homophobia would have been too thick for a jury to I mean, whether you like it or not, a man assaulting a woman is a way more palatable court case than a man assaulting other men because there's still stigmas that.
Well, there's also that
in the larger
the fact it's involved children too.
Right.
And
right.
That's you know, and Vince has never been accused in any of that, but it happened in his company. But that stuff is going to come out. Like this is 40, 50 years of this. So it's like, you know, it could possibly be part of the suit. You don't know. That's why when people were thinking, okay, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Like, we don't know. It could take a long time. I mean, what if they decide to charge people in WWE separately? What if, you know, if it comes to that? Maybe it's just what they have now.
What if Donald Trump becomes president and pardons him?
I mean, that could happen.
I mean, I'm just saying
if the case is a long way away, then he may not be. I mean, his presidency could also be over before it even gets to that too.
I mean, I just wonder.
As president, you still have a public opinion to worry about. I can't imagine, you know, Trump even for a second thinking he would pardon Vince McMahon if it were public opinion. But that's just.
I mean, I know it's a wild theory. It's just there's so much crazy crap that happens. Sometimes you just have to like.
Oh yeah, it's certainly something that I mean. It's funny. I mean, it sounds like to even think that that's a thing, but like, could former WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump as president overturn the case against his good friend, which I think he'll more than anything probably distance himself from.
Yeah, I can't see how he would. I mean,
he has bigger fish to fry, I guess. Thank God.
I mean, the people he pardoned and, you know, before he left office were people that were very, very, very tight with his campaign.
Yeah.
That was Manafort, Roger Stone. I think maybe there was a couple others.
Yeah.
And I mean, these were people who were in prison for, but that was all directed to what his policy was. People that helped him do his campaign. I can't imagine him. I mean, but you don't know. It's Trump. I don't think he thinks things through out like that. But I think if somebody came to him and said, you know, if you do this, you're going to lose, you know, half your support, even among, you know, very pro-Trump MAGA types. I don't think there's a chance in hell it's going to happen. So I can tell you one thing is that I don't think the benefit of the doubt that people that were famous or people that have a lot of money, billionaires, I don't think that's around anymore. I think that's something that McMahon's facing. It's uphill battle. I think that's one reason you're seeing this kind of PR war going on, and they're targeting the victim. And I don't think it's helping them at all doing that. I think that's more involved in trying to take aim at people that are that could possibly file alongside them. Other people might come out because you know we've seen the bad behavior. I mean, we just saw the Sean Puffy Combs, Diddy Combs video the other day of him, assaulting.
He's already put out an apology video today saying that he takes full responsibility. When a few months ago he said it never happened.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a guy who's in his bathrobe. He's in a towel.
Right.
He's in the middle of a hotel by an elevator, and he's got the gall to do this. And it's like the cat's out of the bag on this stuff with rich people, with people who got a lot of money, and I think people are kind of sick of it. I think it's kind of, they're probably assuming now that most of them are doing this kind of stuff. Just the flip side of it. So I don't, it's an uphill battle. It's not like it was in the '90s where
Yeah.
people in public eye who had a lot of money were more admired. They weren't looked at with suspicion as much. And I think that's one thing they're going to have a hard time dealing with. And I think hiring Citrix Company also has some major flaws because you see who he's represented in the past. This is a guy who's a fixer. And he's represented, he's represented probably people. I mean, he was represented the Daniel Pearl Foundation, which is a great foundation. Daniel Pearl was a journalist who was murdered early on in the global war on terror. Yep. And he worked for the Wall Street Journal, but at the same time, he's also represented Chris Brown. He's represented pro wrestlers in the past, but he's also represented Chris Brown, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein to an extent. In fact, there's an entire New York Times article about that, getting into how his how his standard operating procedure works and things like that. But I think the benefit of the doubt for billionaires, rich people, that's changed. So I think if he's trying to wage this as a war of public opinion, it's going to be very, very, very hard. We saw how that happened with Bill Cosby, where you're talking about not only somebody who was rich and powerful, but just universally beloved by everybody.
Yep.
And eventually that fell apart, even after, his case got thrown out.
On a technicality.
People still, on a technicality, but it did get thrown out. And but his public opinion, public opinion on him hasn't changed at all one bit. So I think that's an uphill battle for Vince. Is just that. Plus, you have a record of TV that shows how he treats women. You have of how he views them in TV and how they were used.
So he definitely relies on people in the wrestling world to believe him and have favor with him, especially because we've talked about this, how he uses people like Kevin Nash, who will go on his podcast and just say, "Oh, she's only doing it for money. I can't believe. I hope Vince is okay. I hope he's not hurting too bad, and this is hurting, his kids and like all that crap." And it's just he is using what he can to get sympathy, and he's still using like
a lot of these people would say things.
He's trying to revitalize his brand, is what he's trying to rebrand himself and be popular again.
I was around in the '90s when a lot of people were. I mean, a lot of people in the wrestling business behaved the same way. I don't know much about Nash personally, but I know that this was how a lot of guys operated. Vince did it to monstrous lengths because the rule in the wrestling business was you never close the door on Vince because he's your only ever last source of a paycheck. And everybody carried that like it was a 10th commandment, one of the 10 commandments. And with Vince, it's something where he's always had that over people in the wrestling business. If you notice, the people that have spoke out the most about this, it's been, there's Grant, obviously, because she's filed the complaint. She's not from the wrestling business. There's also Ronda Rousey. She's not from the pro wrestling business. They don't see this through the lens of somebody that's coming up through the indies or the PC or developmental or came over from WCW. They view this as somebody from the real world.
Well, Ronda's competed in legitimate sporting, which like I've also been. I was an athlete in my younger years, and so like there is regulation and there is oversight and there is it's not like it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We've seen with like NASA and people like that, but there is oversight and there is like testing and there is
this is an issue close to Rousey for a long time. For a while she did train with Kayla Harrison, who Rousey was an Olympic bronze medalist in judo. Kayla Harrison was a 2-time gold winning medalist. She's a little younger than Rousey. And Rousey was abused by one of her coaches.
I believe it.
She's actually from my area, and she told the story to the paper I worked at. And Rhonda's very aware of that story. And
it happens a lot.
So I'm sure when she went to WWE and she's seeing how the behavior is there.
Yeah, it's probably set off all kinds of alarm bells.
She's talking about absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the attitude and everything's just so much different because everything's so unregulated. And meanwhile,
she knows the difference.
Yeah, but you see with like the Nasser scandal, things like that, women are going into these situations now with their antennas up, and they're being, they're very watchful and mindful of what's going on. And I imagine that's probably was Ronda's situation and why she's been speaking out the way she has.
But I guess that's probably to your point, which is entirely that they're trying to discourage anybody else from joining Janelle. If even one more woman or even anybody from any of those other scandals joins in and says, here's a cold complaint, I'm going to come, I'm going to back her up.
Yeah, and if any of these women with NDAs decide to speak,
I think that judge would be disbarred if they didn't push that forward to the next.
Yeah, they would level. It would be on appeal in 10 minutes.
I mean,
and the
I
thing
just
is,
don't see how you could be on the bench after and saying, oh, well, after 2 people said it and they filed a complaint like that, even half as bad as Janelle's. Because if you read that whole thing,
it's terrible.
Gross.
It's a very horrendous.
It's
I've read some. I've read it's nightmare. It's true. I've read some very horrendous.
I can imagine you have.
I'm sure you have.
Just through murders and shootings and things. And I mean, if you're a journalist long enough and you're in an area that's not too big, you will come across people that you've had to read about. And it's tough stuff. The Grant complaint was really tough stuff. And,
it was.
And I think he did devalue her a bit. Maybe this is a pattern because she wasn't from the wrestling business. She was somebody he brought in. But there's always been rumors of Vince and stuff like this, like him and his secretaries going back to the 80s. One of them testified during the steroid trial. She had signed an NDA too. Plus, you also got to remember that NDA law is not sticking like it used to. And one of the things they've asked for in the complaint is for all of Vince McMahon's NDAs that he's had signed over the years with women to be just knocked out. Which if that happens, in the civil trial, that makes a big difference. Thing is, though, in a federal trial, that don't make any difference at all. They can sign 5 NDAs. They got to sign 10. They're still going to have to testify if they get called into court, and they're going to have to tell the truth. And this time, they have a lot better, the investigative capabilities are much better now. And it's not going to come down to, okay, do I make Vince mad because he's the last paycheck, or do I not perjure myself, or I not, do I not perjure myself in a federal case in the Southern District of New York? I think that answer is pretty easy. But just to say that, I just don't see how this is an uphill road for him. I just don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to take a while too, but I think there's a lot that's going to come out. I think there's still a lot that's going to come out, and I think the criminal indictment will be very interesting if that happens. Just because, I mean, you're talking about all the communications on his phone. You're talking about emails he's had for years, going back. When did WWE start using email? You're talking 20, 25 years. You're talking, you're going to talk about people that he's had hired to work for him. It doesn't matter how tight and buddy they are. Now, wrestlers have come out and flat said they lied on the stand, or they at least change their stories, or at least try to make things better for Vince during the steroid trial. That's not going to happen today.
No.
There's no way that's going to happen today. Maybe if you're a mob boss, you can get that to happen. Vince may think he's, the wrestling business has a lot of similarities to the mob industry.
Sure did.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but he's out this time.
Too,
he's not in the company anymore. That's the one big sort of key thing. He's not in. He's gone.
He's not offering the paycheck now. He doesn't have that.
He doesn't have any power in that company.
Yeah, and TKO's flat said he's gone forever. And the thing is, what's funny is because of Vince's hold on a business, people don't believe that. Some people there still think he's coming back, which is insane to me. But some of it's trauma, some of it's just,
Well, it's because and then he retired and then he came right back. So then, of course, some people are like, well, he's done it before. Like, he could do
just
it again.
Just like Nick Khan's infamous line, "Oh yeah, we knew Vince wasn't going to stay retired," which was
right. And it's interesting that Nick Khan is the only one named in the lawsuit that is still there, because nobody is really, and a lot of people are just brushing over the fact that Brad Blum is gone. Like, he just quietly left a few weeks ago.
There was no social media post wishing you thank you for all this wonderful work you've done. There was no anything like that. And nobody's asked anybody at the company about it. during the press conference.
I mean, I was gonna say nobody wants to ask questions in the press conference except for Lucas.
Well, we know how that works out.
He's the only one brave enough to a 21-year-old freelancer was the only one brave enough to ask a real question, and then we saw the response.
Well, sometimes that's all it takes. I mean,
he was brave.
Style.
If you listen to his interview with David Garrett from Friday, he was like, "I wasn't being brave. I was just doing my job. I didn't realize because he's young. He literally." This was I kind of love it. It's like, this was sheer, just naivete. This was a young reporter who got taught how to do journalism properly.
I think he was just doing
did journalism properly and got attacked.
Yeah, because he was, he was on John Pollock with John Pollock and Brad Thurston, and he was just like, and he was so poised, and he didn't seem rattled, and I think BJ and I talked about how that shows you that in France how they would the French media versus the US media when it comes to covering wrestling, that he treated it like a real press conference. He asked a real question and he got a typical PR response not even a typical PR response, because that was not a good PR response at all. But so you see how he is, he's taking this opportunity as, like you said, doing his job. And he said that he wasn't there to be a fan. He was there to work. And that's what he did.
If you listen to Triple H or Paul Levesque or however you want to call him, if you listen to his response to that question, some of the others they've had, you can tell he doesn't really kind of fully grasp what's going on. I don't think it's really hit him. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I don't know. But just from listening to his answers to the questions, it's just I don't think he understands the gravity of all this.
I didn't read the lawsuit.
That's what I was just about to say. That was brought up.
A lot of people are talking about wrestling media and people like this. Let me tell you, this is a true story. And Sarah Gannon was 24 years old when she busted open the Jerry Sandusky story at Penn State. Ended up being one of the worst horrific scandals in the history of sports.
Yep.
And you were talking about a case that went back 30, 40 years back to the early 70s. And she started working on that when she was a student at Penn State. And she was working on that through two papers. She was at the Harrisburg Patriot, I believe, and she was working on that. So you don't have to be a Wall Street Journal reporter, or you don't have to be, you may consider yourself a content creator, but if you just ask questions and put in the work, you can do something important. You can do something like this where you can, make changes. And it was a lot of her work on that case led to the, a lot of the police getting more interested in interviewing more people. And it turned out a lot of that work was going on while she was interviewing people, and she won a Pulitzer Prize for it. She went straight from the Harrisburg News Patriot to CNN after that. And she didn't even want to leave. It was just, she was getting so much crap from Penn State football fans that she just was like, I can't do this anymore. I have a job at CNN on offer. I'm going to there.
Right.
But she was 24 years old. She's 3 years older than Lucas was when he said his question last week. So you don't have to be you don't have to be Dave Meltzer. It helps to be Dave Meltzer. It helps to know, have an encyclopedia worth of wrestling knowledge in your brain and be a great sports reporter. It helps to have that. But, you don't necessarily need it. You just have to just do the work, and you can make a difference in this. And if, and I'll say this to anybody, maybe a content creator or a wrestling media member listening, is that, you can make a difference in this if, whether your content creation or your goofy YouTube channel or whatever your brand is, you can still make a difference if you ask the right questions, if you do it in the right way, if you just do the work. And that's something I think I was glad to see Lucas, him be able to do that and show that, was that, people have been asking that question a lot. Like, okay, why aren't they answering these questions?
Right.
Why is it that they're reacting to reporters this way? Lucas was able to put that on the forefront. And I think it shows that, you can be on a podcast, you can be, you could be some guy that used to cover a long time ago, but now works in mainstream media and come back and maybe write a little bit about it and make an impact. You can have a podcast talking about, Japanese wrestling and not really into American wrestling, and you still make an impact. If you get in there and you can ask the right questions, if you get a couple people to talk to you, if you do the work, you can make a big difference. And look at the difference that it made in the lives of people that were, affected by Jerry Sandusky. You can really make change. And I think that's something that Lucas showed, is just that it doesn't matter your age. If you ask the good questions, if you're somebody that's willing to do the work. And I said that 5 times already, but yeah, you can make huge
But it's
difference.
important.
Right. Yeah, and then that goes back to the point that somebody has made recently. Like, why has nobody has pressed Paul Levesque and said, "Hey, have you read the lawsuit yet? It's been 4 months. Have you read it?"
Yeah. Somebody, they had a wrestling media Twitter space the other night, and I listened in anonymously. I was at work, and I think it was Rich Latta brought that up and said it's indefensible. Nobody's asked that since the Royal Rumble press conference. Like, have you read the Janelle Grant complaint? And if you haven't, why not?
Right.
Maybe
that's your
maybe it's just
freaking
he doesn't
job.
want to, at least just
it's your father-in-law.
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah,
job. Forget that part. I mean, I get the family connection, but it's his job. That would be like the president of any company saying, "I haven't read a lawsuit against my company on this level." Like, you think the head of Philip Morris didn't read the lawsuit when that was filed? Like, not possible.
I don't know. That was like 10,000 pages, but
yeah, okay, but she probably didn't read all of it. But he was aware of what was going on. He was not able to just
somebody gave him the
off.
Cliff Notes version. I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I'm sure he had plenty of attorneys to help.
You're my favorite nerd for knowing how long it was. Thank you.
I just remember how huge it was. It was great for Ohio. We got the settlement and built a lot of new schools out of it.
No, it changed so many things.
Yeah, and it changed it changed a lot of the corporate, kind of the corporate relationship with, people and country, and just how much damage can a corporation do.
Yep.
And fortunately, I think there's a lot of cases still out there that really, especially when you get into the opioid crisis and things like that, I don't think that's ever been fully, I don't think any full justice has come from that close.
There isn't.
No, not at all.
Actually, our state attorney general is thinking about suing the oil companies for climate change because we've had to do so much work here on our infrastructure that's been directly related to it. And I'm like, if you can get it in the works, that gets people talking about it. Yeah. And once it's in the justice system, it starts to become a conversation, at least. Yeah. I mean, that's where everything's sort of, whether people like it or not, and whether they realize it or not, like it's not working as well as it used to, but it's important that we have this process that we have because it is built on consensus and due diligence.
Yes.
Like if you are a true believer and it's functioning the way it should function and notwithstanding corruption, this tumbler of justice that we have is really important because it needs to be evolutionary. You can't have the same laws from 1950 in 2024 as we're seeing.
Yeah.
But you can't. We need to make
I think it shows that I think what it shows with the Speak Out Act and the 2020 Unfair Act, and even with the recent federal precedent, is that despite how adversarial the two parties are in talking, society can move. It can move laws forward. It can move things forward. Things can happen where crimes are getting addressed now that wouldn't have been addressed 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. And, this is going to be a test of that. Vince McMahon, he's innocent until proven guilty.
Correct.
Right now he's just in a civil case. He's got a case to make. But, it's going to be, Janelle Grant's got rights too. And to me, it's just as important as anything else in this, is that, she's able to tell her side of the story in this. And at the end of the day, she seems to be wanting justice. I think at the end of the day, too, is that, people talk about Vince's legal team. Janel Grant's got, if I was talking to somebody about this the other day, I said, if Vince put the Avengers together, then Janelle Grant's got the boys. I mean, she's got Ann Callis. She's got a really good corporate multinational firm out of Connecticut. And she's got Eric Holland, who's one of the Rainmakers. I don't know if you remember the Matt Damon movie.
Yes.
But Eric Holland has had tons of class actions that have come out against corporations. Like, he's probably the key guy in this thing.
I did not realize that.
I didn't know that I didn't know that he was on her team.
I mean, I read a civil action way back when, and then so I know like the kind of chain of how those started. Because I
don't think he was directly involved in that.
He wouldn't have been because that's way before his time. That would have been all the way back. But it was kind of along that evolution. He used the laws from that to get where he was going with that. So, and I read about her, and she's got an amazing resume. I mean, she's
and
well,
Kyle is incredible.
Somebody on one of the wrestling podcasts was talking about this nobody lawyer from Illinois, and I'm like, she's the first chief justice, and she's the first chief female judge in Illinois, like the 4th or 5th largest state. I'm like, a nobody. I'm like, okay, sure. I mean, I hope I could get a nobody like that.
There's a Federal Reserve Bank here. I mean, I live in Michigan. I live next door to Illinois, basically. I mean, on the other side of the lake from it, but yeah, she's not nobody. She's very and I mean, it's the Weinstein thing alone, but I mean, she's very far from nobody. I was like, okay, at least she's got I love that comparison. That's fantastic. Huge boys fan.
It's just like her team is set up to
kill the soups. Let's go.
I mean, they're gonna get the work in on this, and I never thought I covering this industry for as long as I have, and I quit watching wrestling for 10 years because of a lot of the stories that came out like this. And just, when I read people just talking about, it's just wrestling, it's just this, they don't remember the stories like this that happened in 2000s with women and things that were ongoing, but also just the deaths in the industry that were happening. I mean, I was losing 2 or 3 friends a week at some points that were in development or indie or in one company or another, or just retired. I mean, you're talking about people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, early 50s who were having heart attacks and dying left and right. And a lot of them were under contract. A lot of them were working for WWE when this happened, or they were in WCW, and just how horrible that death cycle was in a business. Like, I can't believe I'm talking to you guys right now. Like, I can't believe I've even watched wrestling anymore, because it's just, I just remember the day I turned it off, and I'm like, I'm never going back to this. I think I watched one wrestling episode in 10 years. It was Bret Hart coming back. And part of that was because it happened in Dayton, where I live at. And it was at Nutter Center. And it was just, to me, I just watched that. I'm like, man, this has been 10 years and since Survivor Series, and the industry still hasn't got over it. And I was like, I think that when I saw that, I thought it was going to die out. I'm just like, there's no way the wrestling business is going to last. This is stuck on this. But then you had people like, just a group of people in the indies who were changing things and making things different and working. And, they were able to they were able to recreate the business in a lot of ways. It's made it where it is right now. And even WWE's success is built on a lot of the work people did in the indies. Yeah. And things like that. And, and I think Brian Pillman Jr. cut a promo one time talking about this. It was a promo on the heel Young Bucks, but he said, the only reason I got involved in the wrestling business was because I saw the Bucks, and it proved to me that, good young Christian guys could be in the wrestling business and not have to deal with, the garbage of the past. And I think that's one thing we've seen today. There's been a lot of improvements, but, it's still got a long way to go. And, there's a lot of names out there of people that have probably done things that need to come out. Remember that. I mean, the speaking out movement didn't happen too long ago. So
it's only been 5 years.
Yeah, and I mean, there was almost nobody from WWE that was named in that at the time. There was a couple names that came out, but not many. And
I mean, there were, but they just got rid of it was more on the UK side of things, and they got rid of the people who they could get rid of because they didn't see them as stars. But then they kept the other ones, and like we've talked about it recently, because Joe Coffey was named, and he's still in NXT, and he helped The Rock work out ahead of WrestleMania. So like you see that type of stuff, but it's. Yeah. But it's just Vince, and we've talked about this, that Vince has trained a lot of people to see wrestling a certain way, and he tries to use that to his advantage, and that's part of the way he's gotten away with some stuff for so long.
Yeah. There's so much inherent danger, and you allow yourself to be kind of insulated like that, and it's all coming to a head for him. So, and I don't have anything that's rock red proof I could give to anybody. I've heard tons of stories. I've heard a lot of things over the years, and I've seen the kind of guy he is by the television he's produced at times. And
sure.
And I didn't think I'd see this happen, but I'm not surprised either.
Right.
I mean, because everybody in this business knows it was out there. And and that's
the stunning lack of shock is the part that's the worst.
Yeah. I mean,
everyone going, yeah.
The biggest shock was just how horrific some of the details.
Deep it went.
Yeah, I was gonna say how depraved
I think
it
some
was.
of the people, I mean, I even heard, I mean, there was contrition in Dave Meltzer's voice for a couple of things where you could actually hear where he felt like to me anyway, I felt like an actual human felt like I should have followed up on that story more in some ways. And
yeah,
I mean, for better or worse, I mean, the problem with this business is that you're so interconnected with people, and it's like, so you have friends in the business and you have people that work in this thing, and so it's hard to keep an objective perspective. But I think everybody that's a human being knows this is wrong. It's been going on and we don't want it going on anymore. And it's got to be better there without him around. It's got to be.
yeah.
There's no way it's not better. The guy, like, just look at some of the silly shit they put out about him. Like, he doesn't like it when you sneeze, and he thinks that yawning is, and he thinks that working out will actually kill you. And it's, the guy's a nutbag. Like, he is.
That's one thing I loved about AEW when they started the Dark Order angle, which was, it was like kind of you couldn't tell if it was a corporation or a cult. And it was like, and they kept throwing all these Vince thing stories in, like he was throwing pieces of paper, because that was like a story I think somebody told, that he threw a piece of paper at somebody mad, and the guy sold getting hit by the piece of paper, like it nearly killed him.
Right.
It was Vince throwing it, and then that became a thing on BTE every week.
Yeah.
And then it just like they were, you know, and Matt and Nick Jackson were picking up a lot of that on their recent, heel development. Like they even had the Vince mustaches until some of the other stuff came out, and they're like, okay, we're getting rid of that. But it was like they're just parroting, the terrible WWE stories that are out there. And but it just shows you that this isn't the same business. There's a lot of people who we're not going to put up with this, and they're going to stand up against it.
Good.
And
unless they're inside of WWE, and then that's when it becomes an issue. And then thank goodness, Rhonda, because Brad mentioned it in the comments, that it pisses him off that Drew Gulak is still there. He wasn't fired. He's just sitting at home until his contract is over, and he's getting paid by them. While just,
that's where it hurts when you don't have enough experienced media in a room, because if I would have heard that question, I don't want to say I'm always perfect at getting this.
Well, of course.
I've been in a lot of press conferences. I've screwed up too. But I would have said, wait a second, you did not give him an answer. What was the answer to his question? Especially if it's a better question I asked.
Well, that would be the right way to do it, is that you would do in real journalism school, they teach you that if your journalist asks a good question and they deflect the question, that you
happens at White House
question up and be like, can you answer the question?
Yeah. You just, hey, you didn't answer this question. What do you mean by that? Especially if it's something like that. It's a great question.
Right.
It's like, well, did you tell me his non-renewal had nothing to do with Ronda Rousey? Did you hear what Ronda Rousey said? What's your reaction to it? It's like no one even asked that. It's like no one even followed up when he came out and made a statement. Yeah, it was great to see Stephanie back. She's back home. Did that mean she have a job back? No. Right. What's her involvement? She's corporate officer number 3.
Right.
She's right there at the top of the complaint. Nobody even followed up on that. Instead, we got, hey, legend, which is going to go down in the annals of wrestling media history as a.
I'm just.
Triple H even looked annoyed at that guy, okay, look, I got 10,000 people sucking up to me today. I'm not in the mood for it.
It's pretty bad when you're getting no-sold in that situation.
Yeah. But my message to people out there, especially if they're women affected in the industry, or they have a story to tell in this particular lawsuit or story, is just, come forward, and just realize that, the wrestling industry isn't the end all be all of the world. There's a different world. There's more to the world out there. And when you get insulated into the wrestling industry, you don't realize how real justice works, or how real things work. And what's going to happen in the court, in the civil case, and in a potential criminal case, is going to be a lot different than what happens and what people are talking about or what they think will happen. I mean, you're talking to people on podcasts who think they're experts on this. They're for 30, 40 years. Oh, I've just seen Vince get out of everything. Yeah, well, he's never had anything like this.
Mm-mm.
And that's to me, that just shows how insulated people are to that life. And, they're not necessarily the people to be listened to the moment. I mean, I don't know. I think the company could still face a RICO charge in all this.
Yeah.
If that happens, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for them. The other thing is this is stuff that's going to be unfolding over the next few years. They're in a hot spell right now. They're very hot. It's been going for 2 3 years. Well, sooner or later they're going to cool off.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope they don't cool off for the wrestlers there, but how's the public going to react to them, and the fans going to react to them if their creative's not as good, if they're missing some of their guys, if a guy like Cody leaves or gets hurt, or he decides he wants to get into management or something, or if Roman Reigns never comes back, or they lose some of the creative oomph they got right now.
Yeah.
That's going to affect how people see them too, and then you're going to be going into the court with that, going into a down cycle. You got Netflix deals, you got deals with CW, you got deals with USA Network. That's a lot of stuff that's going to be affected by this, and WWE is a defendant in the civil suit. They're a part of this, just like John Laurinaitis and just like Vince McMahon, and people seem to forget that as well.
Sam makes sure and points out every single week that everyone forgets, because that is something that we hear at Powerbombshells remind everyone.
Okay, well, WWE is a defendant in the lawsuit.
They are named as the company in this lawsuit, which means.
And they are siding with Vince and John Laurinaitis and trying to take this to private arbitration. Why is that?
Of course they are, because that's better for their shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want the shareholders reading that complaint if they haven't.
If that goes to court, the shareholders are going to see that they were making deals while all of this stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And that people on the board of directors who were responsible to those shareholders were making they were not acting in the best interest of the shareholders, which is a big flipping deal. You don't mess with those parts of the government. You don't play with the money. Only the money people get to play with the money.
There's
very specific.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's something that, after Grant's investigation, that's when all the payouts started to happen with other people. One of them was Rita Marie. And people were thinking, wow, Grant only got $3 million. What the hell happened to the other women? I mean, there was I think it was anywhere between 11 to 12, 13. I mean, Brandon Thurston knows.
Somebody got 11 million or whatever,
there was somebody got 7 million. I have
7 million. Yeah, that's what it was.
And they got double digits.
They're like, if she got that amount of money, what happened to her? And then you had, even when this case first came out, and it was who was it that they brought out on? I think it was Ashley Banfield had on her show, and he was like, I've heard of worse things than what's in this Janel Grant lawsuit. There's stories that are worse than this. Reading how depraved this lawsuit is, I can't even fathom what could be worse than that.
I think one person, it was Kinitzky's son, Nick Kaczynski, back in the 80s, said there was somebody who was a worse story than Grant, and they were female.
Yeah.
But that person, if they, I don't know if Grant's legal counsel's been able to reach out to them or not. I know from what I put together, they've talked to lots and lots and lots of people. Lee Cole says there's at least one former diva from that era who's possibly suing him at some point, because you don't necessarily have to join in with Ann Callis and get them as your representation to join a civil suit. You can join it with your own representation, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, this stuff's just now unfolding. We're in the baby steps here, and
right.
And it's just this is going to be a long time. That's just the civil suit. And and then when that, if the criminal indictment comes down, then the game changes completely. And
it's just weird that the FBI took his phone and haven't they still have his phone.
I'd assume they have it. If there's grand jury still sitting, I would have it as evidence. They wouldn't just give it back.
And they raided his office, which I think people also forget. They raided his office and they took his phone. There's something.
Wasn't that a middle of the night raid? It was a.
I don't know.
That I'm not sure.
Remember,
I do know that they just listed it. WWE just listed it as there's a federal grand jury sitting in the case of Vince McMahon. That's all it said. I think the default feeling from everybody was that it was probably based on the payouts given during the period of the Grant complaint being or the grant investigation by the stockholders, or by the stockholders, but by the board.
Yeah.
And I think that I was thinking, okay, this is possibly something else. Maybe it could probably be that, but I couldn't find any answers on it, and that was because nothing. Well, then I had somebody pop up and tell me, yeah, there's charges coming. There's something coming. There's something coming on the criminal side of this. And then like a day later, the Wall Street had the story that, yeah, this is that whole federal grand jury we thought was over some hush money. It turns out it's over sex assault, rape. They seized his phone. They raided his office. And we also don't know what else that was just the base details of it. We don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot about that incident we don't know. And that's going to come out at some point. So we don't know if they're going to charge other people based on what they find in that. We don't know if they're going to charge other people based on what they found in communications or what they've been told, in interviewing people. So, I mean, the FBI gets involved, especially in the Southern District of New York. I've had people ask me this before, but it's like that's a big deal. This is the place that raided Sean Diddy Combs and like all of his townhouses all over the country at the same time. This is not a place to play games. And they obviously view this as a very important endeavor. So when it comes down to it, if this gets indicted, if he does get indicted through this grand jury, there's gonna be a lot of things happening. It's going to really rock WWE to the core. It's going to really, it's going to change a lot of things. Just the grand jury, just the indictment itself, because you're going to see there's going to be charges out there. There's probably going to be things discovered that we haven't seen. I mean, that's a possibility. Maybe not. Maybe it's just things we've already read in the grant complaint. If that's the case, that's serious stuff. And there's a company involved in it that he used to cover a lot of this up. And there's a lot of people in the complaint that, if everything and that's down the line button, and they had dates mentioned, places mentioned, meeting rooms mentioned, offices mentioned. There's gonna be witnesses called in that. You can't hide behind an NDA or say, well, I'm not turning on Vince. Well, guess what? This is the FBI.
Yeah.
This is the federal court system. These are federal prosecutors. These are U.S. district attorneys. They're not gonna, that Vince doesn't mean much to them.
Right.
His name value in this. If anything, it's just, we've been wanting to get this guy for 30 years for bad stuff. We got the chance. We're going to get it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be interesting once all this plays out.
Yeah, definitely. And you and I have talked about this a lot, that it feels like WWE doesn't, or the people like the Powerbombshells don't realize how serious this is, because Vince has gotten away with so many things for so long that people within that company just do not seem to get it. Like, this is a huge, huge deal. And it's more than these salacious headlines and things like that. This is a very serious case, and it's not going to just go away overnight. Like, this is and like you said, if complaints come out, and even just on the civil side of things, but if there's a criminal trial, it's going to get so much worse. And that's why I keep trying to remind you that, because BJ has told me this several times, like, we're just in the very early stages of this. Like, we have a long road ahead of us. And so we're going to keep seeing this stuff from Vince, where he's trying these tactics because he knows that, we're having to play the long game here, and he is going to just keep trying to trash her any chance he gets. And he's going to try to keep, if it's quiet for a little bit, then women might be like, oh, okay, well, he's kind of backed off of Janel, I can come forward now. And then he's just going to leak something else, or he's going to say something else to try to deter these women. Because if any of those we've talked about this a lot too, that these are just the women that we know about that have these NDAs, but there are so many other women who have been affected by him that don't have NDAs and don't just had to deal with it. Now they're trying to move on with their lives and things like that they could decide to come forward. But if any one of those women decide to break their NDA, then it's just, I think people will, I don't know, hopefully they'll understand, like, this is a very big deal. This is not just something to sweep under the rug. Like, if the longer we get, I just hope people are prepared that it's going to take a while, but also remember that the longer it takes, though, it's probably because they're collecting evidence too.
Yeah, likely that's probably the case. If they extend a deadline, if the longer this goes, that's probably part of it. It could be they couldn't find the evidence that they wanted. You never know.
That's true.
But
That's true too.
But yeah, this is gonna take a long time. Federal grand juries take a while. Federal
Cases take forever.
Yeah, and
it takes a long time.
yeah, I mean Vince may not even live to see the end of all this, but
yeah, that's certainly
I mean
possible
he's up
too.
there.
That's that's a really interesting point. I didn't even think about that, but he is in his 80s now, so
He's 78.
He's
78.
Okay, and he had
I mean that's totally realistic.
He's had health issues, like he had the spinal surgery 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So like those are just the health problems we know about. There could be other things going on that
it's really silly. I mean, this is like you said, this is not just a big district, it's a busy district, and they've got a lot going on. And I mean, I've seen like personal like law things take, like I had a thing take 7 years.
Yeah. We talked to anybody who's ever been.
And the funniest part about it is like you went through all this stuff and for 7 years, and then at the end of it, we went to mediation and the people didn't even show up. So we ended up winning because they just didn't show up. And it was like, I could have done that 9 years ago. Like, and it's frustrating as a taxpayer, but at the end of the day,
it's like civil cases that have been ongoing for 25, 30 years. It's just locally over something like a tree being cut down. I mean, and you get to domestic cases that are like, just, divorces and things like that and custody battles. Yeah. They're just talking 10, 15 years. But we'll see what happens. This is a high profile case. It didn't take them that long to get to Trump. It didn't take them that long to wrap up and get stuff on Sean Combs. Of course, we don't really know how long that investigation took place, but it wasn't 5-10 years. So we'll see what happens. I think the importance of it, the gravity of it, and the number of possible victims. I think also the nature of this, just what we've seen from the civil suit. If that stuff ends up being fact and they prove that, it's going to be something I think they jump on sooner or later, but it's still going to take a lot of time. So, it's fans are going to be in for a long wait. And that's one thing wrestling fans are notoriously not, is patient. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Humans, but wrestling fans are worse.
Yeah. I am completely losing my voice. I would love to keep talking.
No, please go ahead. And I was just about to say, depending on how long this case goes, we're probably just going to have to bring BJ back periodically to come talk to us about this stuff.
No, you can ask.
No, please don't. No. Please, I appreciate you coming and taking the time to come hang out with us, and you are now an honorary.
Thanks for having me on the show. I love that.
And I popped your tweeter up. I wanted to make sure and ask you before I did it, in case you didn't want that up there. But I've got your details. Your tweet.
Twitter handle. I don't care.
We didn't get a chance to talk. I didn't want to throw it up there and have you be like, no.
That's fine. Yeah, you can put it up there if you're any bot or troll from Eastern Europe or Russia. This is where you can send all your hate. Right. Where you've been sending it for the last 10 years, so you might as well just keep sending it now.
Or your cryptocurrency, NFT scams.
Yeah, if you got NFT scams, I'll listen to all of them. I love NFTs. And if you want to hate on the Bengals and complain about
now that I know that we're next door neighbors and that because our states are supposed to hate each other, it's kind of a bummer because we're not supposed to like each other.
Well, I'm a huge Buckeye fan. That's another thing. I love Ohio State.
The University of Michigan medical people are my bros, so I'm go blue on this front.
Right. Okay. Well,
we should let you go before I start singing the victory song.
All right. Well, I hope they don't cut the wrong leg off or something with you at some point.
Right?
Oh man! All right, well, I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much, BJ.
You guys are awesome. I'm a big fan of the show, and
thank you. That's such a nice compliment.
Yeah, and I love the coverage you're giving women's wrestling. I think that's probably where a lot of the exciting developments in the business are happening right now, and you guys have been on top of it. So I read all Sam's tweets for a long, long time, and
that's so nice.
And she's even said, "Oh yeah, I wish I would have Patreon these." I'm like, "You still can. This was brilliant. You should have did this." I would have done. I would have done the same thing. I would have done it for free and then forgot about it. But
right.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, BJ. That was very nice of him.
Yeah, we weren't sure. I really enjoyed BJ coming on the show. We weren't sure if we were going to get him today or not because he had some in real life things that he was that would determine whether he was going to be available today or if he was going to come after our after the pre-show next week. And so we are glad that we were able to get him on today. And so I think that's all for the Grant Vince case.
Yeah, let's
portion
let's
of our
move
show.
on.
It was a great conversation. But yeah, so now we have some less serious things to talk about.
Yes.
And so we're gonna switch gears. So apologies for the slamming on brakes and jerking you forward, but we're gonna switch gears completely now.
You know,
and
I mean, we can't have a 3-hour show every week.
I mean, we could.
Basically do. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yes. So we're gonna switch gears and go over to AEW. And as I mentioned, next week is the Double or Nothing pre-show because we are going, and as they drove home 95 times last night on the Collision Rampage show, is that we are coming up on the 5-year anniversary of the first Double or Nothing.
Are you sure?
That's what I've heard. I might need to check my notes about that.
Okay.
But I believe it's also like Nikki and I talk about all the time on WWE. They always talk about Bronson Reed's weight. They always talk the 300-pounder. Nikki's like, how much does he weigh? And she was like, wow, he's got big because they call him Big Bronson Reed. And it was like we always joke too back when the CWC was happening. They used to always talk about Cedric Alexander, how much he weighs, because he had to cut a lot of weight to make it to 205. So they always talked about that. Oh, and then Javon Evans, they always talk about his age.
So here's one for you. I'll go you one better. I'll go further back because it was one of my first my friend that introduced me to pro wrestling. Joke that we had was that Mark Henry's sexual chocolate thighs were, I cannot remember the exact centimeters around, but they had the complete measurement of
I had forgotten about
that. They used to say it over and over. And so as a joke, because we worked at he was the pro at the golf course that I was a greenskeeper at, and we were close in age, so we became friends. And he's like, you got to come check this out. And I was like, what the hell? And I would come and hang out and whatever. And then I ended up getting into it because it was the Attitude Era. And of course I did. I was like, one of the nights I was there with him was one of the nights that Rock debuted. You know what I mean? So I was like, I hit it at the perfect time. It was like bang, bang on, perfect place. And I mean, I was a child of the 80s, so there was no escaping it even if you wanted to. Hulk was in your face everywhere. He was in the market, supermarket checkout. He was on the TV. He was in, my dad was a ginormous Rocky fan. So we watched that over and over and over again. I mean, so but they used to, Mark Henry's thighs measurement was and that was like a running joke.
Yeah, did do that. Yes. And so now the other thing that Nikki says is also, can they tell me someone tell me how old Nick Wayne is, because I haven't heard.
I haven't heard either. He's only 19 years old.
19-year-old Nick Wayne. I was like, man, this kid has a birthday.
What are they gonna do?
We're like, oh, he's not a teenager anymore. But yeah, so it came out this week that there's a graphic. The graphic came out earlier, and then one of the engagement accounts posted it, and then while I was watching ROH, they did pop it up. So it appears that we're going to go.
Graphics real then.
It appears to be because it popped up during ROH. We're gonna have
my deep fake radar was very very suspicious.
Did you think it was a Tom's Custom?
It just didn't. I mean, maybe it's a denial thing or whatever, because but I was just like, I needed more confirmation.
I have not seen it since then. It has not been played on AEW programming at all.
It wasn't on. Well, it wouldn't have been, because they wouldn't have spoiled it, because they taped it on. And I know this because Jim was in Portland they wouldn't have spoiled it on the taping of Collision. Okay. So unless they were going to tack it on to something visually,
so I assume they're going to. I'm sure on Wednesday they will make it official. But it appears to be that we are going with a triple main event for Double or Nothing. So instead of just saying that you want it to be Anarchy in the Arena, because we know you do, you're just going to try to appease everybody, and instead you have pissed off everybody. Because Mel and I have made the argument for multiple weeks, but really the last 2 weeks on why Willow versus Mercedes should be the main event for Double or Nothing. It's a story that's a year in the making. It's Mercedes' first match. She is a main eventer. She main evented WrestleMania twice. She has main evented other pay-per-views. Deonna Purrazzo is somebody who has main evented pay-per-views, and in AEW, they are the only company that has not had either one of their women's titles main event a pay-per-view ever. And so then you have this contract signing between Willow and Mercedes, and LaRon asked us last week, and I still never got confirmation. LaRon asked if this was the first time that two women have ever signed a contract for a pay-per-view main event. Obviously, we've seen Britt and Thunder Rosa sign it for when they did their Dynamite matches, but those were not pay-per-view matches. And so I believe that was the first, and unless somebody can come let me know for sure, but I believe that is correct. So it seems like all the momentum was pushing it this way, that was going to be the main event. And then, but if the graphic is to be believed, and it's going in order of the graphic, then it is Willow versus Mercedes, Anarchy in the Arena, and they are closing with Swerve versus Christian, which is a choice. And I say that as somebody who loves Christian, who loves Swerve. I really enjoy the story. I think I like Swerve's heel behavior coming back to bite him in the ass and that he's going to have to deal with that. I like all of that, but I feel like the story has only been happening for a few weeks, and to have that main event your pay-per-view is not that's not the story that I would have close the pay-per-view. I don't think that's a main event. Out of those three, like, that's not the final one. And that's not to take away anything from Swerve and Christian, again, as performers. I love them. I think they're fantastic, but just story-wise, for me, it's still Willow versus Mercedes. And what are your thoughts on this?
So I have a few things. My first thing is, my biggest concern is that Mercedes hasn't been in a ring in a while. And I know that she's an excellent wrestler and I know all of those things, but she hasn't been in a ring in a while. So it's her first match back.
Sure.
If it was the main event and they fell on their face, not that I would think that those two would fall on their face. I would think that at worst, Willow would kind of have to really step it up the same way she did the last time and whatever.
Sure.
But, so just to play devil's advocate, it's like, maybe we don't put it at the top of the card just yet, and we do put it at the top of the card later, and we do all these things. But by making it a triple main event, you're just literally pandering. Because you're not saying, no, I'm not going to make the women's main event. No, I'm not going to make the story that... Because, I don't even think... Because it's Mercedes and Willow, and they're so strong. And I think that this match is going to be good no matter where you put it. And I think that... So if you put this, third from the top, let's say, which is probably where it's going to end up anyway in the grand scheme of things. It's just... But if you... Instead of advertising it as triple main, you put third to last. It's a huge match. It's awesome. She's back. She wins her first match back, because you obviously can't bring her in and not have it happen. But there's some kind of thing go on, and it's great. Awesome. And then you go into the Anarchy and you're done and whatever.
Right.
So to save it, maybe there's something to that. But just do it then. Just say it's not a main event. It's going to be the third from the top. Not a triple main event.
Yeah,
third from the top.
Yeah, apparently
make a card.
Several people have pointed out this is a UFC thing. Okay,
builds.
This is
make
AEW.
a card that builds. You have your third to last, your second to last, your last.
Yeah.
And these three matches build to an incredible ending of your 5 years of Double or Nothing.
Well, and Daily DDT tweeted when this rumor came out was, if you have 3 main events, you have 0 main events.
That's it. You make none of the main events worth anything, especially by putting the belt at the end. You've got your championship belt, your championship, the world championship for AEW, as the last thing in a triple main event. You're not, to me, it's like you're pandering to the women because you don't want to hear it from us. And
guess who has a media call next week?
And
or this week rather.
You're devaluing all 3 matches by like being like, ooh, it'll be, how about we have a spectacular card for you building up to these things. And then Willow and Mercedes have this monumental match wherever, whether it's the main event or maybe this is the time, maybe it isn't, but call it what it is. Do not give me this. And especially, like, what happens if they do the thing what they did with Athena for the ROH pay-per-view? And
oh my God, yeah.
They decide to put Anarchy second to last or third to last and the belt, and then the women's match is the main event. Haha, just kidding. Bait and switch. Like, what if they pull some crap like that before?
Right.
I mean, it's my equity and trust in Tony is being tested with this kind of thing.
Well, it just feels like you don't trust women to main event your card. And you keep driving home the point. This is 5 years, 5 years, 5 years. In 5 years, you've never had a woman main event your pay-per-view before. ROH has done it twice. Willow was one of the first. It was her and Athena. And the very first time that ROH main evented, that was the first time women had main evented ROH ever in the entire history of the company, not just under Tony, but under all of it. It was the first time it ever happened. TNA has done it multiple times. Like we've talked about, Deonna Purrazzo has main evented multiple pay-per-views. Mercedes main evented multiple pay-per-views. And you keep saying, like, you want to attract these women. Well, how are you going to get another 4 horsewomen and you're not going to let these women main event? Like, you've got to win. If it's not going to happen now, then win. Because, you've got Forbidden Door next. I know it's not happening at Wembley. Mariah and Tony don't seem to be ending anytime soon. That is the only, at this point, that's the only other women's story that could main event a pay-per-view, but that doesn't seem anywhere near ending. So are we going into year 7 before women main event? Like, why do you not trust your women to carry a show? And if you feel that way, then why are you not building the women to a point where you personally think that they can main event a pay-per-view? Why are you not building them to get to that point? We're 5 years in. Why is this still an issue? Why do we have to have this conversation constantly when you don't, like, what is it going to take for you to be like, okay, I trust you enough to sell tickets to this pay-per-view? Because people, regardless of how people think of how some people think Mercedes, they dropped the ball with her, this or that. I feel like that's a conversation I see mostly men having. I see a lot of women who are really, the people who I see that are really excited for this match are women and also fans of Mercedes. And they want to see her succeed. They want to see her. They know what she's capable of, and they think that she's capable of main eventing a pay-per-view. And so, like, why do you, like, if Mercedes is one of the biggest women's wrestling stars in the world, like, why do you not trust her enough to let her headline a show when she's main evented WrestleMania?
And I guess you paid her. I mean, you paid her the money, so I guess.
Right.
But
and
also,
I know you use the argument, this is her first match back. Well,
I know. And
you have to rip off the Band-Aid at some point.
I don't think that, like, necessarily, I mean, she knows what she's doing. She's been in the ring for a million years, and that's great. I hate the devaluation of it. Slap them and give them time.
Yes.
Then give them third from the top and give them 35 minutes like, let them wrestle, like, let them, because Willow is strong, and let Mercedes show you how back she freaking is.
Right.
But by calling it the triple main event, you're, like, devaluing it all. So you're saying that you're essentially acknowledging that you should, or there's at least an argument to be made for putting the women at the top of the card. So you're admitting that you are entertaining that, but instead of making a firm decision, and Tony has this problem universally. Tony is the grayest of gray. Friends, don't do it. This just blows everything up, because it says, like, I don't trust any of you, really.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, like you said, we all think that Anarchy should be the main event. Just make it the main event and call it what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't have to be the main event, but I feel like they want it to be because it has main evented in the past.
But then call it what it is,
right? And they generally pre-tape some of it and then have the final happen live in the ring. And it feels like, unless there's gonna be some big thing happen, like perhaps they are doing Swerve versus Christian last because Hangman is coming back. I mean, but that, and I love Hangman. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of his, but that is not something that you have to do in the main event. At least with these 3 matches, if there were, if we weren't doing an Anarchy in the arena, and we weren't, then perhaps. But I mean, I feel like that unless something huge is happening, and that's why they're doing Swerve versus Christian last, maybe that's what saves it. But just looking at it on paper right now, from what we know for sure, I don't feel like that's not the strongest match of the 3. That's Swerve versus Christian could go pretty much anywhere on the card. And again, that's not to take anything away from the 2 of them, because I think they're fantastic, but just with the story that they're telling, like, we're rushing it to get it to the main event next week, I feel like. And so
here's my horn, but if you can't hear me over it, let me know.
No, you're good.
The idea is that to me, you need Swerve to defend this belt, win this championship, and continue his run, but you don't necessarily need it in the main event slot. And I know a lot of people argue
every title has main evented, but the women's titles, and I guess FTW. But that's the other point of this. They've the tag team titles. Every title has main evented, except for, I don't know if the trios has, but the women's titles have never main evented. But every single title, so it does not have to be. And if you want the TBS championship to not be a mid-card title, and you want, because remember the big argument when they introduced the TNT championship, as Tony kept saying, this is on par with the AEW championship. There's not a mid-card belt. They are both on the same level. So if your TBS championship is on the same level as your AEW women's champion, then yes, your TBS champion you should have that main event of pay-per-view if it's on equal ground. If that's how you view it and you want your fans to view it, then you need to present it that way.
Yeah, you can't just say it. You have to give it to people. The whole concept it's dumb. I don't like it. I don't like any of it. It sends the wrong message in every possible way. Because it essentially is saying, like, it's almost like a politicking thing where it's like, instead of us taking a stand and saying, we're going to put the card this way because we're confident that this is the way the card should go, and we'll take the flack and deal with whatever, and we'll prove to you that we're doing it the way that we should be doing it, then stand up for it. Don't triple main event.
Which I assume they're going to announce on Wednesday, and then I assume the media call is Thursday, because it's generally Sunday pay-per-views generally have media calls on Thursday. Sometimes
and Collision
Friday,
is live this week because it will be.
Rampage is also live. Rampage is back on
they're
Friday
going to be
night.
at the actual arena or by the same arena in Vegas.
Right. Yeah, none of this is. Yeah,
I can't believe it's Double or Nothing weekend already. It's Memorial Day weekend next weekend, Sam.
Yeah,
what?
That's how I figured it out. Was I was trying to figure out when to have BJ on, and I was like, next week.
I know I didn't even. You're so. I'm so glad.
And then we have a guest scheduled.
Love in the world. She is the reason this thing stays together. And there's she is the glue that holds this.
Thank you. Yeah, I was looking because we have a guest lined up for the first Sunday of June, and we have a guest for the second Sunday in June. And then I was like, where are we if BJ can't come today? Like, where are we going to put him? And I was like, I mean, sure, a lot of things can come out. I'm sure Vince will have more stuff coming out in the next 3 weeks. So there will probably be plenty to talk about. But then I was like, oh my God, Double or Nothing is next weekend. Like, that's insane. I'm going to get to, we have a lot of comments in the over here. And so I want to get to those.
Oh, sweet.
So USDA guy says, opinions on the discourse from Joshi fans about Willow beating Tam in Stardom. It's getting more heated by the minute. Willow has never been considered anywhere near the level of Tam, but wins handily. I don't watch Stardom, I knew that the match was happening, but I have not seen any of the discourse because it's not in my, surprisingly, not that I don't follow Stardom fans, because I do. I don't know if it's just because of how I was online yesterday, but I have not seen anybody getting heated. I'm not surprised by that. So I can't weigh in as well as other people could, because I don't watch Stardom and I have not seen any of the discourse, but I can understand why there probably is some upset fans on the Stardom side of things. Vinkin did say that I feel Tam Mercedes is the Forbidden Door match. Oh, that's quite interesting. And this was just to get Willow an extra defense in before losing her title. So that's definitely that's an interesting perspective. Again, I don't watch Stardom, so I can't weigh in for sure.
Brad is a good person to ask, and as always, we have the 5-star Joshi show.
Yeah, I was gonna say Scott Edwards. I'm sure has plenty of opinions about that.
He is I wouldn't even deign to try and comment, knowing that there is a mind such as his out there that can give you all the information you need and more.
Right. Hassan says triple main event is just gibberish wording. The last match is the main event. Yep. Every once in a while, they can get away with it with a double main, because sometimes there are two matches that are they're equally important.
Well, we did it at Forbidden Door last year.
Right. And so there are certain cases where the double main event works and is valid, but a lot of times it is just to appease people.
But
probably the talent themselves.
Well, that's definitely true. There's no question, based on all of the things that the books, the articles, talent is very tricky.
Yes, definitely. And when you have somebody of Mercedes caliber and you're telling her you can't main event because we have to do a cage match with the EVPs,
talent management. You know what? I'm gonna sit with the idea that Mercedes is in on what's going on.
Oh, I'm sure she is 100%. No, I definitely agree with that.
I mean it in the way that I don't feel like she would have let herself, because she could have, and she even had flat out said she could see herself back in WWE. I mean, for better or worse on that one, but I don't see her as not she would have had to have been okay with the way that this is going.
Yeah.
I just don't I'm going to be cautiously optimistic that there's a bigger picture here, and that the women's main event is going to be
this is misplaced rage and annoyance, but it's the same.
What's the next pay-per-view?
For Forbidden Door.
Okay.
Forbidden Door is next. That's why I keep saying, when is this going to happen? Because there's not, if I remember correctly, there's not a pay-per-view in July.
I love that.
It's Forbidden Door, and
show.
I could be wrong, but it's Forbidden Door. Then there's no pay-per-view in July, and so the next pay-per-view is All In, and then it's All Out.
All In and All Out.
And then Full Gear, and then World's End, unless I'm missing a pay-per-view.
She's definitely not headlining All In, because we know pretty much what's
right. I mean, I guess there's All Out, because you need people to turn around in 8 days. But that might be huge. But that might be Tony and Mariah. Could be All Out. So
unless Tony and Mariah gets resolved at Forbidden Door to try and make that a big part of the story,
which is possible.
Because that would make it a big part of the story, because it would be taking place on a major pay-per-view. Again, Forbidden Door is tricky, because I still consider Forbidden Door, even though it's an AEW pay-per-view, I still consider that a crossover. That's, to me, a super card.
Well, now they're run, but they seem to be run the way the rumor is, and the way some of the New Japan talent are treating this. It feels like it's going to be AEW versus New Japan this time around, and also there's CML is supposed to be involved, Stardom is supposed to be involved. So this is basically one big super show. So you can't so you're not going to do. I doubt Mercedes is going to be. I don't see Mercedes main eventing Forbidden Door. So
that's what I mean.
So this goes to, and she's not going to. She's not going to main event All In, and Tony and Mariah are not going to main event All In, most likely. So then again, if you're not doing it now, then when? When are you doing this? Well, it's been 5 years. When are you doing it?
I guess you just signed a huge talent that was a major, the name to get right now. So,
and why? And you're not putting in her in a main event yet? in a spot that in a story that's been going on for a year on top of that. Like, this is a year, and I know not everybody watches New Japan, and that, of course they're gonna make
but
that
I think
argument.
you can make the argument after watching the Everett crowd that if your region does a good enough job, like if you brought those people to Detroit or Charlotte or Seattle, clearly, obviously, we have no issue. We root for everyone. Right. I mean, we know exactly who just about everyone is. So.
Sure. Right. So Mark Justice says there's never 3 main events. There's only 1 main event, and it's the last match. Mercedes versus Willow should go on last. Also, they're not treating Swerve like a world champion, and that's unfortunate. I've seen that argument as well. Hassan said, imagine they set up 3 rings and 3 main events at the same time.
I mean, you may as well when you're doing what you're doing. Really, that would be very anarchy in the arena.
Oh God, yeah, anarchy in the fan base too. Vinkin said, "Funny thing, Athena's probably going to main event Death Before Dishonor before they do a women's main event show." Yeah, because Death Before Dishonor is June. It's they just announced it. June 20. Is it June 27th? Because June 20th. We're going to talk about this Path to All In series and Death Before Dishonor is part of this, so we'll actually get to that in a minute. But yes, there is very likely that Athena. I think this is going to be Athena versus Queen Aminata. It's probably going to be them. It's probably happening at Double or Nothing.
I might buy that.
They are building the story. They've been building. They haven't had their tag match yet. They're still building that. That's probably coming.
Okay,
soon.
but see, like for me, that I will say that. I mean, I'll flat admit this is I'm not an ROH watcher, but I hear that and I totally buy that pay-per-view.
Yes. Yes.
Based on those 2 wrestlers, I'd buy that.
Yes. Corey says, I'd rather they main event now, but I imagine if they don't gain that spot this time, they'll guarantee that this spot is beyond deserved. Yeah. Vinkin said Wrestle Dream. Oh, that's right. That's October the 1st. Right. Or not October the 1st. It was October 1st last year, but it's early October is Wrestle Dream. But still no pay-per-view in July.
What was the one on the New Year's then? That wasn't
That's World's End is.
Oh, that's World's End. Okay.
Yes. So that's what I say. So there is no pay-per-view in July. So between it's Forbidden Door and then All In at the end.
We've had Revolution and Full Gear already, right?
No, Full Gear is November.
Oh, that's right. That's the end of the year.
We've had Revolution. We've had Revolution and Dynasty.
That you went to, and Dynasty.
Right. And then now we're having Double or Nothing, then Forbidden Door, nothing in July, unless I'm just completely block that out of my memory.
And then August is All In.
All In, and then All Out is the week after, and then Wrestle Dream, and then Full Gear, and then World's End.
Okay. Good Lord.
Yep. Brad says, this is actually before I get to Brad. David says, when is Camille going to debut? That is a very good question. Also, when is Megan Bain going to debut?
When's beer coming? No, I'm sorry. I'm going to make
at this rate, beer might come first.
I think he's been and gone already. So
Brad said if Athena can make the pay-per-view, she hurt her leg last week of the taping. Yes, that is.
Oh, correct. That's right.
Even though I did tell Athena that if she wanted my left leg,
I saw that you
she could have it. We don't know how. We don't know the extent of the injury, but apparently at the ROH tapings this week,
not a match for Jim's kidney.
She hurt. She finished. She was wrestling Viva Van. She hurt her leg. She finished the match. Had to be helped to the back. And that's the extent of what we know as of Friday night. I don't know if anything has come out since then, but yes, so that is also coming into play, and I'm glad and also sad. Brad reminded me of her injury.
Her and Eddie. It was a shitty week for
Eddie broke his leg too, and he had surgery. I believe he did. Did he have surgery? I think he did.
I don't know. He broke it.
I know. Well, maybe they're waiting on the swelling. Maybe they're waiting on the swelling to go down. He was in. There's a picture of him in a wheelchair, and he's got a brace all the way down his leg.
I think in the Observer when I was reading, Dave it hadn't been like 100.
You know what? You might be right. I take that back. I believe it's just broken. I don't believe surgery has happened yet. But
he was like,
but he's already been pulled.
That's
another thing. So Anarchy in the Arena also, like, they put Darby in it, which was not smart because Darby got hit by a bus. He's not cleared from, I mean, he's barely cleared. Apparently, he announced after the show that he had to go back to the he was on his way to the hospital.
Brian Alvarez said that he was tired and that he was dizzy and that he had a concussion and that he was out of there and he dropped the mic and just walked away and never came back.
Right. So they shouldn't have done that. What I thought they were going to do this whole time was that it was going to be Daniel Garcia, because Daniel Garcia he did the little story with FTR for a few weeks where he was coming out on Collision and they were wrestling together. They were having matches together and he was filling in for them. Daniel Garcia is somebody who's been there since the pandemic era. Like, he made sense. And so so that's who I expected. And then here comes Darby. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? This doesn't seem like a good idea. And then that happens. And then
is Wheeler Yuta still hurt?
Yes, Wheeler Yuta is, like we mentioned last week, he's on concussion protocol. He has been dealing with a concussion.
Right. They have been dealing with
concussion symptoms for 4 months, and we have he's not.
And when they don't tell you and it's in a concussion, then usually it's serious.
So it seemed like it seems like it should have been Daniel Garcia. And then last night we saw FTR got beat down at the hands of the Righteous and Lance Archer because they were offered the Elite blood money. Daniel Garcia made the save last night. So it seems like they're kind of like, okay, Darby is not going to be cleared for this. Let's just do Daniel Garcia. It should have been Daniel Garcia the whole time.
It seems like the logical thing to me in the first place.
Yeah. And I wondered that too, Brad, if they were just doing that for the hometown pop, but that's stupid because
wouldn't shock me, but that's still
he's
dumb.
Not cleared. He's
because even the hometown fans were like, we don't need to see you if that's the truth, because I mean, Brian and Jim were there live. They live there. Like, I know where they live.
Right.
I used to work in their towns. Like, none of them needed to see Darby at there. They've seen Darby at Defy plenty. Right. They don't need him to come out when he's in a critical shape of like, I mean, as it was, they were like, I don't want to watch you die. Okay, right. None of us needs to see that.
Nobody wants to see that. And before I get to Brad's comment, I want to go back up here to this comment from USVA guy, and he said it's not going to happen. This is talking about women main eventing. If it doesn't happen at Double or Nothing, regardless of how he words this, Tony is not interested in a woman main eventing AEW shows. And guess who's going to keep asking about it till it happens?
Yeah.
If he's tired of me asking about it, then I guess he'll just have to stop calling on me. You're
not going to be allowed on the calls anymore.
Probably not. I mean, it's not the first time it's not happened.
You're going to fall out of favor with AEW.
Good. I'll write an article about that too.
Sweet.
No, it's frustrating. I understand it, and it goes back to the theory that he doesn't care for women's wrestling and that he doesn't believe in it. It just, the longer you prolong this, you feed into that theory about yourself, which maybe he just doesn't care about, but maybe he doesn't care that people think
he's such a politician. He really bugs me because he's such a politician, because it's like you do these things like with the women's wrestling, but it comes off as very disingenuous sometimes.
Yeah, and even he's gonna frame. I know how he's gonna frame it. If I ask him why the women are not main eventing, he's gonna say they are. It's part of a triple main event. That's exactly what he's gonna say. I already know what the answer is gonna be. It's gonna be, that's a good question. They are main eventing because they are part of the triple main event, and they're gonna try. They'll probably try to push it as that. They're gonna say, commentary is gonna say during the match, this is the first time women have
could phrase your question in such a way that he couldn't like weasel out of it. Like,
he always finds a way.
Well, of course, politicians always know how to get out of questions.
That's what he's going to do. And then they're going to have commentary try to feed it as, oh, this is the first time ever women are they're main eventing because they're part of a triple main event. That's how they're going to phrase it. I can already see how this is happening. And commentary is going to push it all match long. Nikki made a good point last night. And even if it's not the true main event, she said that Caprice better wrap Willow to the ring live.
Oh, I hope so.
Double or Nothing. If it's a triple main event, make it feel like one. Let them get played out to the.
I'm gonna have to agree with Nikki on this one.
Yeah. All right. And so Brad says that he's wondering if it was supposed to be the Elite versus BCC, but Yuta's concussion and Mox being the IWGP champion changed plans. Probably. That seems quite likely. I could definitely see that being the reason things changed, and going the route with, Eddie Kingston. And I mean, Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson, they're obviously two very good people to put in your team AEW type of thing. You keep one person from BCC in there. Eddie's kind of BCC adjacent. But now he's injured. And so you put Darby, who is a pillar opposite of Jack Perry, who is a pillar, which I get, I can see that story. They've got their own story, but then Darby probably is not cleared. So then you bring in Daniel Garcia, which I think, I think Daniel Garcia is somebody who embodies a lot of AEW. He's somebody that we've seen, for a really long time at it. Sometimes I forget that he's not an original because I don't think he came in until the pandemic era, but because he's been so involved and heavily in the storylines. And then, I mean, I don't think that's the route they'll go. I think it's Daniel Garcia. If they wanted to do a pillar versus pillar, you could bring Sammy Guevara back here. Sammy is cleared from what I understand. He's he's off of suspension, I should say. But they may not. They might still be mad at him. So they may not put him in a big spot like that. But I still think it's going to be Daniel Garcia. I think it's just going to be. And then they had, because FTR is not, because, Danielson came out last night after they got beat up, and he told Lexi that FTR is not going to be on Dynamite this week because they're too beat up. And then you also have on top of this, so Danielson, I saw the quote originally from Fightful, but then I went and found the video. Bryan Danielson cut a separate promo last night, an exclusive digital media thing, where he talked about how injured he is. And I will preface this by saying Danielson has said that he loves to lie. Cody taught him how, and he loves to do it. So that is in the back of my mind. When I was reading this, I was like, is he lying? Was he heavily taped last night to feed into this lie? But he said, let me see, I thought I bookmarked it. Let me find the tweet real quick, and I will read you what he says is happening. And he says it he said it in this video, but he said that the doctor told him he needs surgery soon. The quote is, "I got shooting pains down my arm. I'm at home and I have to go get MRIs. I have a compression on the nerve. I have a compression of the nerve root at C6, C7." Ooh. And C7T1. I've got this shooting pain that's running down my arm that won't go away. The doctor is telling me that pretty soon I'm going to have surgery. The only way that I can hold out is if I keep the strength in my right hand. Right now, it's still there. So assuming this is not Bryan Danielson lying and doing Bryan Danielson things, he is potentially very injured and hanging on by a thread, and hopefully can make it to Wrestle Dream to finish out the plans that he wants to have.
I mean, it would make it more dramatic, especially given his history, and he has been known to pull shenanigans right in front of my very eyes that almost freak me the F out. But I don't know, man. Like, those are your vertebra, and you're like, what good is your retirement if you can't walk around with Birdie?
Well, and right, the whole thing with his kids, and people have even talked about the spot with Will Ospreay, because he if you watch the entire video, he talks about that spot with Will Ospreay, and people thought that maybe it was planned. From the way Danielson talks about it, it was not, and he fell on his head. And that's when the tingling down the arms started.
The guy with his history, I mean, his neurologist can't like that he's wrestling at all. As someone who knows,
probably not. Probably
are not excited about that.
No, not at all. And so, of course, I know Danielson likes to play on feelings. He's faked a seizure before. Yep. He knows how to draw it. So with Danielson, you really have to not necessarily take it with a grain of salt, but I think you have to realize, Danielson is very good at blurring the lines with this type of stuff when it comes to his injuries.
He's very good at his job.
Danielson has been he's been injured quite frequently in the last 2 years. So you have to and the things that he's done to his body prior, like on the indies. And I mean, obviously
that's
WWE,
half
he
like
worked
Nigel's whole thing is he's like calls him fragile and like
right. So. Right, yeah, and that somebody else brought that up today. They're like, that could be falling into the thing with Nigel. You know, Nigel calls him Brittle Danielson. He calls him Brittle Brian. They seem to be still setting up a match for Wembley. So is Danielson playing into this, or is Danielson being serious? And it's kind of and the promo is like, if you go back and watch the promo, like the promo itself, because once he gets on talking about the elite and things like that, and how they were supposed to, you know, they say they want to change the world, but they don't want to work Saturdays. They only want to work one day a week, and they're lazy. And he's like, I'm the only one who has the guts to say you are lazy. And like, so the whole promo is phenomenal. And then when you look at the promo as a whole, you're like, so is he really this injured? I think with Danielson, we would not be surprised either way. But then also you feel like, okay, well, as long as his right hand has feeling, he can continue to wrestle. So is Team Elite going to use that, where that's what they focus on, is that arm, trying to make him lose feeling? So there's that. So maybe it's real, maybe it's not. So, but generally with Danielson, his promos tend to have a lot of truth mixed in there with them. So, and nothing would surprise me at this point. I would love for him to be lying, but unfortunately, I don't think that he is. I feel like feels a little. So Anarchy in the Arena's got that on it too, that we have to think about. So. Yeah, and Nikki said, Hassan made a good point that maybe the Bucks take out Darby before Anarchy. I could see that being how they get him out of this match, that they put a bounty out, because that's what they did. They put a bounty out on on FTR and Danielson last night, so that's certainly possible. And then Nikki said compression of the nerve root is fucking hell. I'm pretty worried about him. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, it could be a lot of play here. So maybe on paper, it looks like a terrible idea. Perhaps once the pay-per-view is all said and done, we'll feel differently about it. But on paper, I don't like it. Yeah. I don't like this at all. And then, so we mentioned this briefly about when we were talking about Death Before Dishonor, is that there is the AEW announced this week. I have let me see if I can find. I meant to pull this up, but I had it. I forgot to. So they sent out a press release this week. Let me find where I posted it. And I will tell you. But they're doing this Path to All In series, where they are doing 6 shows from the same arena, which is
Texas, in Arlington, Texas.
Yeah,
the Esports Arena.
Yeah. It took me at first when I was reading it, I was reading the esports and I was like, wait, are they doing something with esports? And then I was like,
that's
wait,
what I thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to reread it. And I was like, oh, that is not what this says. So, yeah. So as Mel said, from the esports arena. And so they said, so the Path to All In series, that they have announced so far, because it says additional Ring of Honor dates will be announced in the future. But what's been announced so far is Saturday, July 20th, they're having AEW Collision. Then the following Friday is Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor. And then the very next, so that's July 26th. Then the very next night, they're doing Collision. And then Thursday, August the 1st, they're doing AEW Collision, and it's taped to air on Saturday, August the 3rd. And then Saturday, August the 10th is Collision, and Saturday, August 17th is Collision. And I believe that I saw somewhere in there, it says this lineup includes TNT's AEW Collision, Battle of the Belts, and the highly anticipated ROH Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view. So somewhere in there is also a Battle of the Belts. They just haven't specified which one that is yet. So it's interesting that they're doing all in one area, because I've talked to 2 different people who had differing opinions on this. So is this oversaturation of the market by doing 6 straight shows in one location, or is this because it's a smaller arena, just a smart business move to get fans more familiar with talent in both ROH and AEW. So do you have any thoughts on this?
Now, I read about this. It's about a 7,000 person venue. They're trying to build a venue up in the community as something to be utilized. So it is somehow, I mean, the venue paid them to do this. They offered them like, hey, come here and do this. I don't know where I stand on it. If it's good for business, it's good for business. And maybe that will help. It will cut their costs in terms of touring. I don't know if the collision shows have been drawing as much unless they're attached to something else.
I think the one good thing about Death Before Dishonor being there is ROH has problems selling tickets to its pay-per-views. So if they're building, but this is the second show in, so I was gonna say if they're building a relationship, maybe they sell more tickets to Death Before Dishonor. But it's the second
Texas
show.
This is a really good market for fighting, like combat sports. Period. I wish I had asked Ryan. I feel like I should have asked Ryan what he thinks about this. He lives there, but like I don't know. It's mixed bag because on the one hand, it's like my Evolve shows always ran at the same place, and they were like, I mean, but they were touring. But like, if it was, oh, okay, so I mean, AEW has a huge Texas market.
They do that, yeah. I believe that's correct.
I mean, I feel like if you could make this work, it could be actually really fun and cool because they even mentioned the Von Erichs and that the kids might even be coming back to wrestle.
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
They did their shows once a week, and that was even here in Detroit. Chic ran once a week for a long time, and it's like in the same location, and they drew huge. So I guess if you get the right market and the right situation, plus it gives the like stability of, especially if certain wrestlers like ROH wrestlers or Collision wrestlers are always going to be on Collision. Maybe they stay in the area. Maybe they get to training with some of the local gyms, local talent. I mean,
well, and Athena's from Texas, so then you have that.
Okay,
like,
there you go. That's
saying she's hopefully, depending on what's going on with the leg injury, but she's from Texas. She lives there. Thunder Rosa lives in Texas.
Oh, that's right. Of course. Yeah. I mean, so
yes.
It's the connectivity. I mean, you could make this work really well for the company. I was wondering when I was reading about it, I was like, I wonder how many people would travel to Arlington to go see, like, because obviously you're going to draw, most of this is going to be predicated on the local community showing up to these.
Right.
But and I would assume they're going to use about people that live
talent there too
in the local area that may or may not have an AEW show come to their region. If it's because, most people in those regions are used to driving the extreme distances it takes to get. So it made me wonder, are there places around even greater? I mean, Texas is ginormous.
Probably. Yeah.
But maybe it'll start to help if it's stationary for a little while. It'll have the effect that like the pandemic era had of sort of being like a little bit of a Collision HQ. I mean...
Yeah, because Collision will use the and Rampage too. They will use the local talent. So there's that.
Right.
ROH uses a lot of local talent, so you have that.
Well, it makes
and if they're adding in more because it says additional ROH dates to come. So there's that. So one of my thoughts looking at this scene, there's 6 dates in a row. Of course, one of those, but it is Path to All In. I feel like they're gonna do I think this is where they're doing the Owen Cup. I think that they're doing a tournament to make people keep coming. Like, because I was like, if you start
that would be really smart though.
Right. So that's why I'm wondering, because I was like, if you're doing 6 weeks in a row, like what's going to keep fans coming? Of course, not every fan is going to come 6 weeks in a row, but what's going to keep fans coming every single week? A tournament. And so I was thinking about it and I was like, well, they could do the Owen because somebody reminded me that the Owen last year, that it was in the summer because it finished at the Canadian Stampede or at the Stampede in Canada. So I was like, so that's what because they haven't mentioned the Owen at all. And so I'm wondering if the Owen is going to be, and not that they can't do some of the tournament matches on Dynamite, but I'm wondering if that's what they're doing with Collision.
That's a good idea.
That Collision is they're going to do the men and women's bracket and then the finals happen at All In.
But it helps build up the venue, it helps build up the tournament, and it helps build up Collision's consistency. If the Because let's say it does become like a niche thing where the locals do start. I mean, even if you get 500-600 people in there, you can make that look loud. I mean,
yeah,
you can do a lot with a little. I mean, I've seen OTT's presentations, and it's like, I know how many people are actually in there, and that show has a bigger feel than it actually is. Like, I mean, you can pull it off, and I mean, they have the budget, and they'll have more money because they won't be touring.
Right, that's true too. Yeah, so I feel like a tournament is happening here to make
I
people
love this.
come.
But to me, that is the perfect thing to do with that.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I was like, how are you going to get people to like come? Sure, you're going to have some.
Then if the Battle of the Belts then if there's going to be a Battle of the Belts, put the culmination of the tournament on the Battle of the Belts then. And then have someone really win.
If you're not doing well, because it's the path to all in, it's obviously going to lead to all in matches, which they could potentially do, you know. But if that ends when it does, then maybe it does happen at Battle. Maybe the finale is at Battle of the Belts. Maybe that's where they do it. Even though
for the Owen,
that's what I'm saying. Maybe so. Perhaps that is where they do it. So it's an interesting. It's interesting, and they've never done any. I mean, they've done this stuff in Canada where they've been kind of in the same area, but they haven't done it on this scale in the U.S. where they're. We always joke about how Chicago gets all the shows. And so this time it's in Texas and it's 6 weeks in a row. So it'll be interesting, and maybe it works, and maybe it's something that they keep doing. I don't know if it's something they travel to, or maybe every summer they spend 6 weeks in Texas.
They better make it affordable is all I would say.
I was thinking the same thing. I was wondering because tickets go on sale.
Summer vacation, so theoretically.
Well, and I was wondering because they're doing 6 shows, are they going to do a package where you can buy tickets where you can go to all 6 shows, including the pay-per-view? And then is that an option or do you? Yeah. So maybe that's something that they'll offer as well.
So a family pass that gets you either. You could do a regular or a flexible pass kind of deal where it was either come see 3 shows that you pick or come see all 6 shows and get into a Battle of the Belts for free as it was.
Well, and they also, if they do a deal, that could be a really good thing to make sure that Ring of Honor sells out because they are struggling with their pay-per-views.
It would help Ring of Honor too.
I mean, again, it's the second show of 6, so it is early into whatever they're doing, but hopefully because they've announced it enough.
Maybe if it works really well, that becomes the ROH base HQ, and you start running Ring of Honor out of a.
Well, they did that. They were doing Ring of Honor out of out of Orlando.
I don't mean not touring entirely, but having a kind of I don't mean having a base of operations like Jacksonville, where it's just that ROH is in Arlington, for example, but they tour out of there. So then you would have operationally, you wouldn't have 2 companies trying to haul in a whole bunch of bull crap. And I mean, at that point, then you do need to consider, though, giving someone else the book.
He needs to give the book to somebody else right now because the booking has been awful down there.
I mean, it's.
But I see what you're saying.
The thing is for him, ROH, he owns ROH. It's not part of anything else. That's his money. That's his company. That's his baby. It's his pet project. So something like that is actually kind of lucrative for when you think about it just as a small business. Niche. Running a small promotion is essentially what he's running out of this location. And he needs ROH to get built up. I mean, they're using it for Collision, but Collision is your leverage maybe to help boost ROH. Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think it could work, but to me, if you don't make these tickets reasonable, then you can just call this a failed experiment already, because you're talking about summer vacation on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
When that's when people go to the lake,
and they've got a Thursday, and one of them's a Thursday taping to air that Saturday as well.
Weekend Saturdays, because parents work during the week most of the time. I mean, in general, but I mean, you're going to the lake, you're going to the beach, you're going to the amusement park on Saturdays. You're not going to want to go see a wrestling show unless there's a big draw for it.
Yeah. Which is why I think there could be a tournament involved to get people to come, especially depending on who is in the tournament. I mean, I'm not expecting huge names. They generally do a mixture, but I could see that being a draw. As okay, if I get the chance to see Ricky Starks if they learn how to book him before he leaves. Like, but that Ricky Starks is a big name that can be like, okay, well, I can go see Ricky Starks and he's in the first round of this tournament and then he wins and moves on. Okay, I can see Ricky Starks again next week, in the next round of the tournament. So you've got that, you've got the stars that you can build, doing that. And then maybe you see, okay, maybe this is where they bring in Roosh, we'll have LFI involved in it. And you've got, because they will probably have, I'm sure they're going to have some of the Mexican wrestlers that they tend to book in Texas. They could do that obviously there. So you can bring it, because Roosh returned. Roosh was on TV last night. They showed it on Twitter, but he arrived at the arena with Preston and Dralisico, so they could potentially be in it. Like, so you could do things like that. I don't know that Vikingo is supposed to be back anytime soon, but you've got Commander that you could put in there.
I think he can be back, but he has to come in under a different name is the deal.
Who, Vikingo?
Vikingo, I think.
No, Vikingo he's out with surgery. He had surgery. No, that was Black Taurus.
That's okay. That's right.
He's Beast Mortos, and he wrestled Rey Fenix. And Rey Fenix is apparently, as we found out a few weeks ago, he is injured again. So, yeah. But you can put Penta in it.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah.
Well, there's tons of talent from that area.
Yeah, there's tons of talent. But yeah, I mean, they may be focusing on that too.
Even bringing the Von Erich boys back, which Tony apparently mentioned.
Yeah, I could definitely see them bringing in the Von Erichs to be.
It was in the conversation when I was reading about it. So,
and the Von Erichs wouldn't even have to be in the tournament. You could just have them in other matches on the Collision show.
On the cards.
Yeah, you could. I could see them having a 0-hour match on Double or Nothing like they did before. Like, they're not Double or Nothing, Death Before Dishonor. You could do that to bring them in. So I could see.
And Thunder Rose says she's got her promotion, so maybe some of her women could come work the Collision shows.
Right. Yeah, because she's got Mission Pro down there. And like we see, that's how, Robin Renegade is one of her students or has been. And we see, she's getting really good opportunities. She had another one last night against Deanna. Yeah, there's tons of women. And then we've seen Maya, because Athena's Thai as well. We've seen like Maya World is somebody who has trained with her some, and she faced her in a proving ground match like a few weeks ago. So they could definitely, there's a lot of talent that they wanted to focus on bringing in local talent. You've got Rachel Rose, you've got, there's New Texas Pro. That's where Brian Keith came from. So like you could do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you've got all, there's a lot that they could do there. And thank you, Brad, for getting to that. Eddie had asked if Bandito is still hurt, and the answer is yes. He had to have a second surgery on his wrist. So he's
awesome.
He's having a hard time. And I didn't mention this last week, but at some point we have Scorpio Sky coming back, because they've done 2 weeks in a row with vignettes, and I'm very excited that they have remembered him and he's just getting on TV, and I'm excited to see. Maybe they put him in a tournament.
There you go.
You can make him. Maybe he can compete in the Owen. Yes. And so I guess we'll get to the last thing, because we've kept you guys here for a very long time, and we appreciate that. But the one of the really positive things that happened this week was that Ashe 4 has officially been announced, and they are the full card has been announced. The show is going to be on Sunday is going to be on June 22nd. Yes, me too. As Nikki says, she's hyped for Scorp. But yeah, so it is going to be June 22nd. I don't believe tickets will be on sale soon. I should know this because I just saw it. I think it is this week. They have not announced
Friday,
yet.
I think.
Yeah, I think you are correct. That sounds right.
Because I subscribed and I get the notifications in my email because I buy the pay-per-views. So their smart marketing team often sends me, hey, guess what? It's coming up. And I know.
Yeah, so May 20th. Mel is correct. Tickets will be on sale May 27th. I don't know that the tickets will be on sale to purchase it to watch.
They usually don't do the watch link until a little bit later, because I think they generate it closer to the show. But
yes, but they were smart and going ahead and getting this card out ahead of time, because this card is stacked, and I need to find out from them if you did not purchase any of the first 3 shows, if they are still available for purchase, because there are stories that are happening on this card that have started back from the first episode. Some have started from the second one. So that'll be so I think that you can, and actually, I think some of them may be. I think the first one is on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the first one is free on YouTube now, and I do think you can buy the second one still.
Yeah, I think you can. I need to clarify that. I thought about it this morning, and I didn't have a
or
chance
you can
to
go
reach
check
out.
and subscribe to the thing right there.
You
on
could,
the screen
yes,
for you.
and they are putting up free on YouTube. They often put up free matches. They just put up on Friday. They just put up Kiera Hogan versus Charity King of the King Bees, because that is leading to a big match at this next show. The story has kind of been building since the first one. And so which we'll get more in depth with the card like once this gets closer to the show, but I do want to go ahead and give you the rundown of this card so that if you are in the Charlotte area or can travel to the Charlotte area, you should buy your tickets on May 27th. If you are not, be sure to pay attention. We will let you know too when you can buy the link to watch it from wherever you are at, because this is going to be a huge show. And so we've got on Ashe 4, we have Billy Dixon versus Darius Carter. This has been a story that has been playing out since the very first show. They even got For the Culture involved with this story. It's one of the biggest stories in Ashe wrestling. So that one's going to be really good. The King Bees are wrestling Fire and Flava. As I mentioned, this will be Tasha Still's in-ring debut. She did appear at Ashe 3 to come make this match. It's a huge triple threat match, which I'm really excited for. It's Yaya versus LeBron Cozone versus Man Like Darius. If you watch DPW, then you are probably very familiar with LeBron Cozone. He is really fantastic. I've seen him several times at DPW and another promotion around here. I've seen him a couple times. He's great. And then Man Like Darius. He's a British wrestler who wraps himself to the ring. It's great. He's really good. He wrestles in GCW sometimes. If you saw For the Culture, he was on there, and he's been doing some other stuff. He's getting ready. I don't think the match has happened. He's getting ready to wrestle Viva Van, which kind of goes back to something that happened at one of the GCW shows. So he's great. Then we have 2D Lynn is making her return. She debuted on Ashe 3. She is wrestling someone named Karen Renee. I am not familiar with her, which is one of the things I really like about Ashe is that they bring in talent that I'm not familiar with, but I trust Darius when it comes to talent. Because Darius was actually talking about Man Like Darius a couple of years ago, because Darius went and wrestled in the UK, and I believe they wrestled. I know for sure he saw they were on the same shows, but I believe that they wrestled in the UK as well. And that's somebody Darius has been talking about for a couple of years. So I'm really excited about seeing him finally. And like I said, so Karen Renee, I can imagine she's great if she's made it, because that's the thing about Ashe. They usually only have 8 matches. So it is not an easy show to get booked on, because there's a lot of excellent talent, and they have only brought in a few. So it's hard to get on these shows. Then we have Owen Knight versus Darian Bingston. Nikki and I have seen Darian a couple times on some GCW shows. For the little bit we've seen, he's awesome. I'm really looking forward to this. Kevin Knight is coming, but he will be fresh off of BOSJ 31, and he will be back. This will be his 3rd show that he's wrestled on, and he is wrestling Fast as Hell Ian Maxwell. That should be a really good one. Trevor Ian, he had a really good showing at the last show. He was in a triple threat. It was really awesome. He's wrestling someone, Jordan Holt. I don't believe I'm familiar with Jordan either, so that will be another new awesome person to see. And then our main event is
a real main event, a singular coup de grace. That's right. Phonetically said.
This is going to be an incredible match, and this alone, this card is stacked, but this match alone should make you buy tickets, whether that's in person or virtually. We are getting Jonathan Gresham versus Shelton Benjamin. I lost it when I saw this match.
Awesome.
I could not believe. I was
so much fun.
I get to see this match in person. I'm so excited. And
they're gonna wrestle like crazy in front of you guys, because
that's
their home. That's
Yeah, this is gonna be incredible because Shelton Benjamin's from South Carolina.
Yeah, it was like
and then
close?
Jonathan Gresham,
He's close by,
Jonathan
right?
Gresham's from Atlanta. So this is definitely, and if you've watched the first Ashe show, there was a Team North Carolina versus Team Georgia. Jonathan Gresham, and then there's some other stuff because the first match Jonathan Gresham wrestled Darius Carter. There was some shenanigans there. Darius Carter is on this show. I don't know where his match is. That's something to keep in mind. With Darius, because with Darius Carter, you never know what he's up to.
Gotta watch out for that guy.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for
sneaky.
him. He is sneaky. He's mad at Darius Lockhart. He might want to try to ruin his main event. I don't know. You never know with him. But I can't believe that I get to see this match in person.
Awesome.
It still blows my mind. We got the announcement this week, and every time I see it, I'm like, this is a real match that's happening. And like Nikki and I, I love Shelton Benjamin, but Nikki and I are really big Jonathan Gresham fans too. And so to see Shelton, because I haven't really seen much of Shelton since he's left WWE. So getting to, and I missed his whole New Japan run, and I heard how great he was when he was in New Japan. And I am really excited to see what he does outside of a WWE environment and to be in this environment, because Ashe is such a special place.
Good.
And so there's just a different vibe to it. It is real good. And it's a very different from anything else that's out there. And so I'm really excited for this show. And so I was like, I have to make sure that we have at least one positive thing to talk about today. And it's going to be Ashe 4. And Eddie asked, is Ashe the official indie of the Carolinas? I mean, I would say yes, just because
there's nothing else right now.
Actually,
right?
it's DPW. It's Deadlock Pro.
Deadlock
Pro is they are probably a lot of what people kind of consider the standard in indie wrestling in North Carolina right now, because of what was here and what's not here anymore. But the type of, DPW has a show today. They're doing, and that card is stacked. Like Mia Yamashita is on this card. Bert Vixen's on the card. Motor City is wrestling MXM because they were supposed to have that match a couple months ago, but I think it was, I don't remember if it was Mansoor or if it was Mason. One of them got stuck at the airport and they couldn't have the match and they had to change the card. So they're finally getting their match back. Calvin Tankman is wrestling. I just blanked on who he's wrestling. He has a really big title match. Like Adam Priest is on this card, Kevin Blackwood. Like there's just some really incredible. Roddy Strong is on this card that he's making his debut. Adam Cole was supposed to debut a few months ago, but that's when he decided to jump off the side of a stage or side of a ramp. And then they're setting up the next DPW show is going to be a 2-show event. It's taken up the whole weekend, and they're bringing back their tag team tournament for the second show, which is probably going to be incredible. So I'd say DPW, but Ashe is quickly making a name for themselves in the Carolinas for sure. So they're definitely one to keep an eye on, and they're probably.
I really enjoyed the show. It's just a good vibe.
It is.
It's something that, and you know what? Everybody's so excited to be there, and all these he gets bigger names and bigger names and bigger. It's it's just gonna be. I love watching this. I'm so happy that there's another. This is the 4th one.
Yeah.
This is so crazy and cool and awesome for them. And you, obviously, I'm excited for you because you get local wrestling.
Yeah, it's awesome. For me, it's great because I get local wrestling, and I've been lucky enough they trust me enough to interview the talent. And so I've gotten to get some just to get their stories out there, which I think is really important. I've got, I did Kiera Hogan's story. Her interview is out there. Kevin Knights is out there. And then I've got 2 more, and I've got to get to, hopefully I'm going to start transcribing it tonight, but I've got 2 more. And so I'm trying to focus on, obviously some of the big name stars that you do know, but some of these local people who are coming up, like you've got, because I've interviewed Yaya before. I have Rayhan is an interview I've got that will be coming out. Tootie Lynn is somebody who is making a name for herself. And so that's coming. So I'm really grateful for these opportunities that the team at Ashe has given me, and to share their story. And hopefully, I don't know, I'll have to talk to them. I don't know if we'll be able to get anybody on the show again, if they'll have time to, because I think if I remember, because the Sunday before is Father's Day, so I don't know if we'll be able to get anybody.
That's probably right. Yeah, I think it's the 16th of June. So that's
because we have
right.
guests. We have guests June 2nd and 9th. Not that we couldn't have 2 guests on one show, but I was like, that might be. But I don't want to. Our previous guests, I don't want to do that to them and be like, hey, you got to get out of here because we have a second. So I don't know if we'll have time because unless somebody wants to come on Father's Day, I'll talk to them and let them know if they want to, they can. But if not,
anybody wants, they know they can come on. They know that they're more than welcome on our show.
Yeah, and we've got to get Chris Lee back on here soon when his documentary stuff is coming out, because I think he's got something coming out in July that he told us about when he was on here before.
You're right.
But yeah. So we'll see. But regardless, we'll be promoting it. We'll be talking about it because there's some really cool stuff going on there. But I did want to throw that out there. And Nikki said that Ian and Kevin Knight probably will not go 30 seconds like Movie Mike, and Fast as Hell Ian Maxwell. The Movie Mike does not like that I bring that up to him. At some point I'm going to interview him, but I don't know. He may not. I'm not talking to her. She always brings up that I lost in 30 seconds. So I'm not talking to her. So we'll see.
Now you're in two people's craw. You're in Tony's craw. You're in Movie Mike's craw. What's wrong with you, Sam? You're in that.
It's a woman causing problems.
We're just we are like, we hate men. We're fascists for suggesting the rules being. Being called a fascist was my favorite part.
I laughed when I read that. I was like, that's
enforcing rules.
That's certainly a first.
I've
never been called a fascist before.
I was very proud of myself, and BJ talked about it before. And when you got the bots for the WWE, that is something that happens on politics Twitters to people all the time when they're speaking truth. And so that was why I talk about being proudly blocked by Sally Albright, because she was one of the people that was one of the sock puppet army masters during that campaign.
Gotcha.
And so it's very interesting to me to see these things play out in other spheres, because it's the same tactics. It's just being used differently. But I just, believe me, when I get called something just so silly, it's just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm a man-hating fascist now. Couldn't be further from the truth, but I love it. And I'm blocked by Sally.
There you go.
You can't get me, boss.
Hey, that's all right. I got right. Nikki did say before we close out of here. Actually, I will bring this up. USVA guy brought this up as we were moving conversations. We've talked about it before. Sometimes the YouTube chat is slower and we don't see things. But he said the problem with the residency is they have no street team. You have to keep the locals involved and invested. You have to do proper advertisement and have proper staffing, 100%. And they are really gonna have to make sure that they send talent out to TV and radio, because every time that they do, when they do it for big shows, it usually ends in tickets. So they're gonna have to send out, like Thunder Rosa is gonna have to do a media tour. Like
if they're gonna have to hang out with local business owners.
They should. You can have Sammy Guevara.
Look what we're doing with just the one time. Like, I mean, just the pub was like, oh, they're coming to town. What should we do? Oh, here, this is the thing. Like, I mean,
so they really should. Yeah, that would be really smart.
They've got small indie.
They've got, like he said, there's no street team, so they're gonna have to pick up the slack, and they're gonna have to send their talent out to do different media things, to do things in the community, which they already do. That they already have, like they'll post it on Twitter where they have the AEW together, and they'll send talent out to do certain things within the community. So this is a huge chance for them to get involved in the community and send talent out to go to animal shelters or children's hospitals or what have you, or anything like, or specific to that region. That would be really smart, and I hope that they are smart enough to do that, because it would be very beneficial for them, especially if this is something that is successful and they keep doing it, or even if they come to a different town, they're going to have to replicate it again. So hopefully they do that. And then Nikki said, we know a little bit of knowledge that has to do with Ashe, but I don't want to get in trouble. I'll just say people are paying attention to Ashe and keep an eye out for future shows.
Good.
Yes. Yeah, we're not going to say anything that's going to get us in trouble, but yes, she is correct.
That's awesome. I love hearing that.
So unless you have anything else to add, you can follow the fascist man haters on Twitter at Powerbombshells, on Instagram at Powerbombshells. One day we're going to get better about, we should probably post over there. So we're just just post our man.
I'm gonna like do some fascist things and just like post myself doing them.
And you can follow us on our personal accounts too, and then of course subscribe to this YouTube channel because there's a lot of really good content. If you don't like fascist women who talk about wrestling, there's also the Dynamite Show. There's speaking of strong style, there is Joy of Wrestling. So there is that. There is some joy in wrestling, and they do have it, and we do have a show about it every week. Then there's some other fun things like last night. I know Garrett went live and they talked about the big UFC fight that was last night. They have one. I don't think it's happening. I think it's happening later today. They're having on Zach Haydorn is coming to talk about his new book. That's happening. I think that's happening today. So yeah, just make sure you subscribe. There's some really good content. And just know that
you hit the notification, bang on that bell, hit that subscribe, and hit the likes. And thank you for your comments.
Yes.
Thank you, Nikki.
But we will be back next week with our Double or Nothing pre-show. So come hang out with us and we will get hype or get mad about the card. You never know.
Maybe we'll have a quadruple main event.
Maybe.
All right. Have a good week, everyone.